Chapter 130. Well. On the side, Xiaqing's groans pulled Luoli back to her senses. Ah! Shaoqing, are you alright? Luoli immediately ignored Chen Daoxian, dropped the red shadow sword in his hand, and flew towards Shaoqing. Look carefully. Luoli breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it's just that the internal organs were smashed by a blunt weapon. The viscera was broken by a blunt object. This kind of injury is definitely a life-threatening serious injury on an ordinary person. But if it is placed on the foundation-building merman, it will at most be considered a minor injury. It will recover in a day or two. Shaoqing glanced at Luoli, then glanced at Chen Daoxian next to her, her eyes lit up slightly, and said, "Don't worry about me for now, the Bishui monkey clan is calling out in front of the main vein, you go back to help." She told Luoli to come to the rescue, but in fact she looked at Chen Daoxian. What she meant? How could Chen Daoxian not understand? It was nothing more than seeing that he easily killed 20 clear water monkeys in the foundation establishment stage, thinking that his strength was comparable to that of the Zifu cultivator. I want him to rescue the merman. Only. Chen Daoxian didn't know the true strength of this clear water monkey clan. How could he be willing to take risks? Little Qing girl, right? Lord. Seeing Chen Daoxian, Shaoqing struggled to stand up and salute him. Chen Daoxian nodded slightly and said, I don't know how strong the clear water monkey clan you're talking about is, heard. Shaoqing hurriedly explained, the clear water monkey clan is a race of ape-like monsters near my demon monkey mountain. Their patriarchs are only in the early third order, which is equivalent to the early cultivators of the human race Sifu. Hear this. Chen Daoxian shook his head. In the past, he would still use his cultivation base to judge the strength of a cultivator, but after discovering that there were still cultivators like him and Zhou Mubai in the world who did not use common sense, Chen Daoxian didn't dare to simply judge a monk's true strength by his cultivation base. It seems that the other party only has the initial cultivation base of Zifu, but how big is the difference in strength between different Zifu early cultivation bases? Just look at Zhou Mubai and Luo Xiuyuan, the head of the Merman clan. At the beginning, Zhou Mubai probably didn't do his best, so he beat Luo Xiuyuan seriously and escaped. If he did his best, Luo Xiuyuan would definitely die in Guang'an Mansion that day. The most common Zifu cultivator, Chen Daoxian, is indeed confident that he can fight against each other 1 or 2 times. But if the patriarch of the Clear Water Monkey clan is Zhou Mubai, no, even if it is only half of Zhou Mubai's strength. Chen Daoxian went to support, and it was no different from courting death. Seeing that Chen Daoxian was silent, Shaoqing immediately guessed his concerns. He opened his mouth and said, Please rest assured, Lord, if the patriarch of the Clear Water Monkey clan is really strong, why wouldn't he dare to attack us directly, but choose to send his clan to test it? Hear this. Chen Daoxian felt that it made some sense. But he shook his head again and said, Perhaps, it's just cautious by nature. Hear this. Shaoqing suddenly did not know how to persuade. In my heart, is there anyone who is more cautious than you? Aside. Although Luo Li's eyes were full of anticipation, he did not want Chen Daoxian to take risks. For a time, I was very conflicted. Half an hour. She looked at Chen Daoxian and said, You better go. There is no need to die with us. Aren't you going? Chen Daoxian looked at her in surprise. Me? Where am I going? Luo Li's eyes were full of desolation. Hear this. Chen Daoxian's heart was touched fiercely. Thinking that she was willing to risk herself just to protect the law for himself, he hesitated at this moment. I couldn't help but secretly despised myself. Immediately, he looked at Luo Li with a smile, and said, Since you don't want to leave, then I'll accompany you home, this moment. Starlight sprinkled on Chen Daoxian's profile. Luo Li looked at the tall, handsome man in front of him and nodded vigorously, Okay, let's go home together, along the way. Chen Daoxian carefully calculated the method of retreating from the enemy. Finally, He finally had an idea. Under the main vein of Demon Ape Mountain, the patriarch of the Clearwater Monkey clan leads tens of thousands of people and is staring at the mermaid people on the main vein. Confrontation. The patriarch of the Clearwater Monkey clan also spit out human words, shouting, "I don't know that the mere people have migrated here. It's really rude. Today is a special day to visit the mere people patriarch, and I also invite a few people to pass the word." A huge ape several feet tall, carrying an iron rod as thick as a tree stump, walked in front of the two armies, jumping and jumping. "Humph. Do you need such a big battle to meet the patriarch of my clan? Why don't you come here alone? Hear this." The patriarch of the Clearwater Monkey clan turned his eyes, and there was a hint of fear in his eyes. But he said, "I brought a lot of clansmen on this trip. It is inconvenient to go to your clan. Please invite your clan chief out." After a pause, it said again, "Could it be that your patriarch was seriously injured by Zhoumubai and died as rumored? If this is the case, I still have a spiritual elixir from the human race, which may save your patriarch's life, but it is unknown. Stop talking nonsense. Fight if you want." The headed merman old man blew his beard and stared. Hear this. On the contrary, the patriarch of the Clearwater Monkey clan did not dare to act rashly. It glanced at a clansman beside him, lowered his head and said, "What's going on?" "I sent out to test the true and false clansmen of the mere people. I don't know. After they detoured to the back mountain of Demon Ape Mountain, until now, no news has come back. Maybe they encountered some trouble." The clansmen on the side tremblingly transmitted their voices. "What a bunch of trash!" The patriarch of the Clearwater Ape scolded. At this time, a white figure flew out from the mercenary camp. He threw the head of a Clearwater Ape to the front of the two armies and said, "Are you looking for this? Huh? Human race?" Seeing Qin Dao Xian, the aura of the patriarch of the Clearwater Monkey suddenly weakened. In the Wangxinghai underwater world, aliens have a natural fear of humans. This kind of fear comes from their fear of Jinhai Palace. The patriarch of the Clearwater Ape took a closer look. That ape head seems to be indeed the clan he sent out. "This fellow Taoist, what do you mean by this?" Although his heart was full of anger, the patriarch of the Clearwater Monkey clan was cautious. Seeing its cautious appearance, Qin Dao Xian was relieved. "The meaning of this seat, get out of the magic monkey mountain immediately." The words fall. A star pierced through the sea space, and instantly killed the patriarch of the Clearwater Ape. "See this sword." Suddenly a threat of death enveloped it. Boom! Crucial moment. It raised the foreign iron rod in its hand and blocked the fatal blow. But its arms were trembling slightly. Obviously, the power of this sword was far beyond what an ordinary Foundation establishment cultivator could use. Sword repair. Definitely a swordsman. This moment. It seems to have mistakenly thought that the person in front of him was the Guang'an sword immortal Zhoumubai. But obviously, the other side is not. Because it knew Zhoumubai. It's not Zhoumubai, and he's so young, he's still a swordsman. There is no such person in Guang'an Prefecture at all, the only possibility is. You are the town, the town. At this moment, the patriarch of the Clearwater Ape was so frightened that he couldn't even speak. Immediately after, it immediately threw away the iron rod in its hand, knelt to the ground with a thud, and shouted loudly, "My subordinate rammed the emissary of the Jinhai Palace, it. Damn it." Saying that, kowtow like pounding garlic. It's hard to imagine that a Clearwater Ape patriarch who was arrogant and domineering just now and wanted to exterminate the mermaid race is now kneeling on the ground like a clown, constantly kowtowing. This moment, Qin Dao Xian was even more curious about Jinhai Palace in his heart. What kind of existence can suppress the alien race to such a level of fear? Not only the Clearwater Monkey family. He carefully recalled the uncontrollable fear in the eyes of the other party when he saw the patriarch of the Merman clan for the first time and mentioned Qianyuan Jianzong. Qianyuan Sword Sect. Although Chen Daoxian had heard of this name before stepping into the path of cultivation. But there has never been a time when there has been such a shock. A cultivator from the Purple House knelt in front of a cultivator in the early stage of foundation building and kept kowtowing. Just by virtue of the 3 words of Zhenhai Hall under the command of Jianzong of Qianyuan. Chapter 131. Demon Mountain. The cave mansion of the head of the Merman clan. All right. Chen Daoxian pulled his right hand away from Luo Xiaoyuan's chest. Your luck is good, it coincides with my breakthrough in cultivation and great progress in swordsmanship. Otherwise, with your injury, you won't be able to live for 3 years at most. Luo Xiaoyuan felt that the sword qi of the wound on his chest was dissolved by Chen Daoxian's sword will, and he felt that his whole body was relieved, as if he had lifted the burden of hundreds of millions of pounds. This moment. Although his face was still pale, the unparalleled strength returned to his majestic body. Thank you, Lord, for saving your life. Luo Xiaoyuan stood up, bowed his head in front of Chen Daoxian, and said respectfully. Chen Daoxian waved his hand, get up. Thank you, Lord, seems to think of something. Immediately, Chen Daoxian glanced at everyone strangely and said, is the Bishui monkey clan so afraid of Zhenhai Palace? This sentence. Immediately, the entire cave dwelling was quiet, and needles could be heard. Half an hour. Luo Xiaoyuan cupped his hands and said, Lord, you may not live in the underwater world of Wangxinghai, and you don't know much about the situation here, so it shouldn't be said that the Clear Water Monkey clan is afraid of Zhenhai Palace. Instead, in the Wangxinghai underwater world, there is no race that is not afraid of Zenhadian. Not a single one. Chen Daoxian was quite surprised. There have been, Luo Xiaoyuan paused, but all of them have been exterminated. Speaking of this, his voice suddenly fell. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian fell silent. He originally just wanted to use the prestige of Zhenhai Hall to make the Bishui monkey clan avoid the mouse and retreat, but he did not expect the effect to be far better than he expected. The patriarch of the Clear Water Ape almost rolled and climbed to escape the demonic ape mountain. Visible. The 3 words Zenhadian have left a shadow on it. Out of the cave. Chen Daoxian looked at the starry sky in the underwater world. This time, because his cultivation had broken through to the foundation establishment stage, he seemed to feel that the sea of stars above his head had become a little different. But where exactly is different? Chen Daoxian couldn't speak again. Let's go. He glanced at Luoli next to him. Luoli nodded, grabbed Chen Daoxian's hand and headed towards the sea. Actually, with Chen Daoxian breaking through the foundation building stage, he can already learn the technique of water escape, and there is no need for Luoli to hold his hand anymore. But at the moment, the 2 of them seemed to have a heart-to-heart and did not mention this stubble. Out of the sea. Returning to the human race world again, Chen Daoxian felt a sigh of relief. He glanced at Luoli beside him, and asked, why do I think that you acted so calm when dealing with the invasion of the Clear Water Monkey clan? Am I wrong? I heard this. Luoli was stunned for a moment, then shook his head, with a hint of bitterness on his pretty face, and said, this is the life in the underwater world of Wangxinghai. I've been used to it for so many years. One has already gotten used to it. It revealed too much bitterness that Chen Daoxian did not understand. This moment. He also didn't know how to comfort the girl in front of him. Maybe for her, all comfort was pale. I'm leaving. He waved at Luoli, then turned his head and flew into the air. Luoli was the only one left, staring at his retreating back in a daze. Identify a direction. Chen Daoxian flew in the direction of Shuanghu Island. Compared to the refining period, the escape speed of the foundation building cultivator was more than 10 times faster. As a sword cultivator, Qin Daoxuan's escape should be faster than the ordinary foundation-building cultivator. But sadly, his current flight speed is really not comparable to that of ordinary foundation establishment cultivators. Because he had just broken through the foundation building stage, he had not had time to practice various sword flying techniques and the technique of escaping the light and turning into a rainbow. In addition, his 2 flying swords were also scrapped at the moment. Even if he learns to fly with the sword, there is no sword for him at all. After all, the patriarch of the clear water monkey is equivalent to the early cultivation of the Zifu of the human race, and Qin Daoxian and his counterpart have a whole big realm, able to fight with each other. It is already a factor that his foundation is extremely solid, and the realm of Kendo far exceeds that of sword cultivators of the same level. If you replace it with an ordinary sword cultivator, you can at most be invincible at the same level, and it is absolutely impossible to cross a big realm and fight against others. Despite this, Qin Daoxian and the Bishui monkey patriarch fought recklessly, and it was not without cost. The price he paid was that the flying snow sword and Qingying sword were almost completely shattered. Think of this. He took out 2 flying swords from the storage bag. In particular, this flying snow sword can be said to have accompanied Qin Daoxian throughout his entire cultivation career. Even if it's not bad. With the service life of the first-order magic weapon, the Feishua sword will not last for a few years, and the aura will gradually dissipate. Looking at the flying snow sword full of cracks in his hand, a trace of sadness flashed in Qin Daoxuan's heart. For Jianxiu, damage to the beloved Feijian is always one of the saddest things for Jianxiu. Qin Daoxian is no exception. As if feeling the master's intentions, the Feishua sword let out a slight whistle, but the aura of the sword body flickered, as if the aura would dissipate at any time. "Old man, next, you can rest," said silently. Qin Daoxian put the Feishua sword back into the storage bag again, and accelerated towards Shuanghu Island. Twin Lakes Island Port. Qin Daoxian made the market town established by Qin Ji expand again, with the continuous flow of goods from the port. This market town seems to be blowing air, expanding in circles. Fortunately, Qin Daoxian greeted Qin Ji and Qin Beiwang. Let them plan the various constructions of the market town in advance. Therefore, Qin Daoxian looked at this moment, the whole market town was messy but not chaotic. Compared with Changping County, which has the largest number of Qin family members, it exudes more vitality. Qin Daoxian knew that this was an economic leap brought about by trade. The material base determines the superstructure. This principle is also common in the cultivation world. Only when the economy develops well will the Qin family grow stronger. Although the world is dominated by monks, the most numerous are ordinary people. For example, the Zhou family has a population of tens of millions, almost equivalent to a country with a medium population in a previous life. So many people. The resources consumed and produced every day are massive. Although these resource cultivators cannot use or look down on them, for ordinary people, they are necessities for their survival. In the Qin family, this part of the work has always been in charge of Changping County Magistrate Qin Ji. In the future, Qin Daoxian will transfer this part of the work to the Ministry of People's Livelihood established by Qin Jiasen for unified management. I watched the busy ordinary people for a while. Qin Daoxuan's mood improved slightly. Using the wind fighting technique, he flew towards the Qin family's spiritual meridian. It has not yet flown to the Qin family's Lingmai. Qin Daoxuan's consciousness swept away. Unexpectedly, I found that Uncle 13 was already teaching in ethnology. In the class of Changping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School. Qin Xianhe stood in front of the blackboard. Explained to everyone the various barriers and understandings of Guiyuan Gong. It's just that this group of people of the blessed generation is just 5 years old, and many people can't recognize the hyphenation. Learning Guiyuan Gong gave Qin Xianhe quite a headache. Only now did he know how good Qin Daoxuan's talent was back then. No matter what, you can learn it as soon as you learn it, and you will be able to understand it at one point, plus study hard and practice hard. A good embryo born to practice. Thinking of Qin Daoxian, Qin Xianhe was a little distracted for a while. This kid. The foundation should be successful. Although he was sure that Qin Daoxian would succeed in establishing the foundation, he did not come back for more than a month. It is impossible to say that Qin Xianhe is not worried at all. At this moment. Uncle 13. A familiar voice came from Qin Ziyan's ear. Hear this familiar voice. Qin Xianhe turned his head and looked out the window. A familiar figure appeared in front of him, smiling brilliantly. Chapter 132. Twin Lakes Island. Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School. In the first grade classroom. Standing on the podium, Qin Daoxian looked at the people of the Fu family in front of him, and said with a smile, "You have all learned some basic knowledge about crafting from teacher Dao Chu, right?" "Learn," inside the classroom. The Qin family student said loudly. "In your opinion, what is the purpose of the refining tool?" Hear this question. The students in the class whispered, not knowing how to respond. Half an hour. A little boy about 1.2 meters tall raised his hand. "Fu Lai, talk about it." Qin Daoxian pointed at the little boy who raised his hand. "Teacher, I think the purpose of the refining tool is to enhance the strength of the monk and help the monk to survive the catastrophe on the way of cultivation." "Very well, you sit down." Qin Daoxian looked around. Does anyone else have a different idea? At this time, a little girl stood up and said crisply, "Teacher, I think the purpose of refining is to make money." Ha 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 ha. In the classroom, everyone burst into laughter. Stop laughing, what's so funny?" Seeing everyone laughing at her, the little girl burst into tears in a hurry. "Okay, everyone, stop laughing." Qin Daoxian made a stop gesture, and everyone's laughter gradually stopped. After all, this person in front of him, in addition to being their teacher, is also the young patriarch of the Qin family. "Fu Yuan, your answer is not bad, sit down." The little girl sat down angrily. Qin Daoxian glanced at everyone, then smiled and said, "Actually, what Fu Lai and Fu Yuan said just now are true. We refiners are refining weapons to earn spiritual stones and buy cultivation resources. Ordinary monks buy magical instruments to enhance their own strength and resist the risks on the way of cultivation. There is no contradiction between the two." Qin Daoxian paused, but there is a problem, that is, in Wangxinghai, ordinary scattered cultivators often carry spirit stones, but they cannot buy satisfactory instruments. "Why is this?" "Teacher, I know this, because there are too few refiners." "I know, because the magic weapon is too expensive, ordinary scattered repairers can't afford it." This time, everyone started talking about various reasons. But to sum up, it's just that there are few artifact refiners and the artifact is expensive. Then do you know why there are so few refiners? It's because the cost of training a craftsman is too high, and a small family can't afford it. Qin Fulai replied. Right. Qin Daoxian nodded. The small family can't train an artifact refiner. The reason is that the profit earned by artifact refining is too low, and the loose cultivator can't buy magic tools, because the price of magic tools is too expensive. One party dislikes the low profit, but the other party can't afford it. In fact, both sides are not wrong. What is wrong? The fault is that our efficiency in refining magic tools is too low, and our productivity in producing magic tools is too low. Qin Daoxian looked at everyone. Therefore, the lesson I'm going to teach you today is to explain how to improve the efficiency of refining magic tools. Done. Qin Daoxian wrote a few big characters on the blackboard. The idea of industrial refiners. The students in the audience followed word by word. Industrial area. Hongyin Feijian Factory. As summer approaches, the weather is getting hotter and hotter. Even with Chen Liangji's congenital cultivation base, he felt that he couldn't handle the high temperature in the factory. Director Chen. Chen Liangyu was wiping his sweat, and a familiar voice made him raise his head. Young Patriarch. When Chen Liangyu saw Chen Daoxian, his face was happy at first, and then he bowed to Chen Daoxian. Finish the ceremony. Chen Liangyu stood up straight and said with a smile, "Is the young patriarch here to inspect the situation in the factory?" "Right, speak up." Chen Daoxian has not come to Hengyin Feijian factory for a long time. More than 2 years. He is basically busy with his foundation building and the education of the Chen family. The foundation is now established. The education problem of the Chen family has also been temporarily resolved. He finally found time to come to the factory to inspect the situation. "Young Patriarch, please come inside." Chen Liangyu immediately made a please gesture. Chen Daoxian followed Chen Liangyu into the factory. The current Hengyin Feijian factory has increased the number of melting furnaces to 9 compared to the one when it was first built. Of course, this does not mean that the production of Hengyin Feijian has increased 9-fold. The reason is that Chen Daoxian, Chen Daochu, and Chen Daoyan couldn't do the refining at the Hengyin Feijian factory all day. Chen Daochuan needn't say more. He has been following Chen Xianhe to learn to manage the Chen family's magic tool shop. Now he can manage the magic weapon shop in Sangxiafang City in Guang'an Prefecture by himself. Chen Xianhe came back to teach. It just proves that Chen Daochuan has the ability to be independent. What makes Chen Daoxian even more happy is that Chen Daochuan did not slow down his practice because of the management of the magic weapon shop. Although Chen Daochuan's spiritual roots are not as good as Chen Daochu and Chen Daoyan, he is also a cultivator of Zhongling roots. Therefore, over the years, Chen Daochuan's cultivation has also reached the 6th level of qi refining, and he is only 1 step away from breaking through the late qi refining stage. Take a closer look. The Chen family has changed a lot in recent years. Not only did Chen Daoxian successfully build a foundation, he became a foundation-building cultivator. Other Taoist monks also grew up. Chen Daochu and Chen Daoyan, as monks with the same spiritual roots as Chen Daoxian, and their hard work and sufficient resources, the progress of their practice is no slower than Chen Daoxian. Even because they had sufficient cultivation resources from the beginning, they had to practice faster than Chen Daoxian. Both of them are now at the 9th level of qi refining. In a state of polishing one's own infuriating energy. As long as the infuriating qi is polished and integrated, one can try to break through the qi refining period. In addition to these 3, the other 6 Taoist monks only had lower spiritual roots, and only 3 had just reached the 4th level of qi refining. The rest are all at the 3rd level of qi refining. But anyway, compared with the Chen family 5 years ago, there were only 2 cultivators, Chen Xianhe and Chen Daoxian. Already too strong. Especially with the first batch of monks of the Fu character generation entering the clan. According to Chen Daoxuan's decision. After a year of basic education, the people of the Fuzi generation. It will be allowed to take Tongmai pill to help it open up the meridians of the whole body, saving a lot of time for cultivation. Only. There were 108 people in the first batch of immortal seedlings of the blessed character generation, all of whom needed more than 50,000 spirit stones to take Tongmai Dan. This is not to mention that more and more monks of the blessing generation are coming every year. Once these monks step into the path of practice, the consumption of spiritual energy and various cultivation resources will be massive. Just relying on the current Feijian factory of the Chen family, it is simply unrealistic to want to support so many monks of the blessing generation. Every time I think about it, Chen Daoxian felt a little headache. Home business hours. He is busy in the factory by himself, and he can make all the monks of the Taoist generation live very nourishing. But as the family grew, Not to mention that Qin Daoxian was busy in the Feijian factory alone. Even if you drove all the 8-year-old monks of the Taoist generation to the factory, the money earned was far from being consumed by the new generation of monks in the family. Chapter 133. In fact, this account is very good. There are a total of 108 immortal seedlings in the Qin family who have just reached school age. By next year, these immortal seedlings will become real monks and enter the fairyland. At that time, they need to consume spiritual energy and various cultivation resources. Let's not talk about spirituality. Only practice resources. The Qin family will have a total of 118 monks from the Taoist generation and the Fuzi generation next year. Among them, there is one cultivator in the foundation building stage and 117 cultivators in the qi refining stage. So many people. Even if each qi refining cultivator consumes 1,000 spiritual stones each year on average. In 1 year, nearly 120,000 spirit stones would be enough. To know. This is only the first batch of monks of the blessing generation. The next generation of monks in the Qin family will be more and more. That is to say, the cultivation resources consumed by the Qin family every year will increase by the number of hundreds of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of spiritual stones. This is only the consumption of cultivation resources. In addition to various cultivation resources, the most basic need for monks to practice is naturally aura. That is, the need for spiritual veins. The Qin family currently only has one first-order spiritual vein. To be frank, the Lingmai problem is the big problem that the Qin family needs to solve urgently. Because Qin Daoxian is now a foundation-building cultivator. If this first-order spiritual vein is only used by him, it is barely enough. If more than 100 qi refining cultivators of the Qin family are allowed to use it together with his foundation-building cultivator, that's far from enough. Not to mention a few years later, the monks of the Taoist generation will start to build foundations, and there are more and more monks of the blessing generation. First-order spiritual veins are definitely not acceptable. Then there are two paths left. First, increase the number of first-order spiritual veins. Second, upgrade the first-order spiritual veins to the second-order spiritual veins. The first plan consumes less spirit stones. After all, a first-order spirit vein is only 100,000 spirit stones. For the current Qin family, it's just a drizzle. However, it is no problem for the first-order spiritual veins to be practiced by monks in the qi refining period. But it is not enough to build a foundation for the monks in the qi refining period. The Qin family doesn't have to borrow spiritual veins from other families every time a cultivator builds a foundation. No one else can lend it to you again and again. After all, after a second-order spiritual vein builds a foundation for a cultivator, it is basically impossible for the next qi refining cultivator to build a foundation within 10 years. This is also a huge loss for a family with second-order spiritual veins. Unless it is a third-order spiritual vein. On the contrary, you can build a foundation at will for the monks in the qi refining stage. But I want to cultivate first-order spiritual veins into third-order spiritual veins. Need to spend 11 million spirit stones. This spiritual stone is a huge amount, not to mention the Qin family, even for big families like the Yang family and the Wu family. For a short period of time. Of course, the Qin family couldn't come up with such a huge sum of spirit stones. Therefore, it can only spend 1 million spirit stones to temporarily cultivate the family's spirit veins to the second rank. Qin Daoxian followed behind Qin Liangyu. Walk inside the factory. Compared to 2 years ago, the internal changes of the Hongyin Feijian factory are not big. The only change is that there are more apprentices in the factory. See this scene. Qin Daoxian nodded and said, "It seems that you have done a good job of the apprenticeship system in the past 2 years. It's all based on the guidance of the young patriarch, and Liangyu does not dare to take credit." Qin Liangyu cupped his hands with a smile on his face and said humbly. Next moment, Chen Daoxian saw that in a production room, a furnace operator skillfully removed a spirit stone that was exhausted from aura from the melting furnace. He pointed to the production room and asked, "Director Chen, how many spirit stones do our Feijian factory consume each year?" Chen Liangyu knew. The consumption of spirit stones in Chen Daoxian's mouth refers to the power consumption of the formation provided by each Rongling furnace for refining spirit ore. That is, the spirit stone that the furnace operator just took out from the bottom of the melting furnace. Hear this question. Chen Liangji's face was full of bitterness, and he complained, "Young patriarch, this melting furnace is good, the only flaw is that it consumes a lot of spirit stones every year. According to the factory statistics, if each Rongling furnace worked at full strength, it would consume one spiritual stone in about 3 days." "So much?" Chen Daoxian said in surprise. When he was working in the factory before, Chen Liangyu was always in charge of logistical issues, including the spirit stones consumed by the melting furnace. After all, there was only one spirit melting furnace at the time. Even if one spirit stone was consumed in 3 days, it would only consume 100 spirit stones in a year. With Chen Daoxian's ability to make money at that time, he really didn't pay much attention to this consumption. But now the 9 fused spirit furnaces consume a lot. After a year, the consumption of the luminous stone reached 1,000. If in the future, various magical instrument factories will be built in the industrial area, and a large number of monks of the Fu character will enter the factory, the number of Chen family Rongling furnaces will explode. Suppose there are 1,000 melting furnaces. That year, the consumption of light spirit stones has reached more than 100,000 spirit stones. It is equivalent to swallowing a spiritual vein in a year. Not to mention the further advancement of the industrialization process of the Chen family. Chen Daoxian, who studied engineering in his previous life, knows that the foundation of industrialization is the driving force. Whether it is the age of steam or the age of electricity, power changes will always sound the horn of the Industrial Revolution. In this life, the driving force Chen Daoxian chose for the refining industry was Reiki. Because the energy of Reiki is a kind of clean and almost infinite energy. Only a few years ago, due to limited conditions, Chen Daoxian was eager to get the Rongling furnace out, so he didn't care about its power. Directly and forcibly replaced the power source of the Rongling furnace with spirit stones. Actually, whether it is cultivation, or using the spirit stone as the power source of the melting furnace, it is an extremely wasteful behavior. Although the name of Lingshi is Lingshi, it is not essentially because of the little spiritual energy it stores. To be frank, compared with the aura generated by the spiritual veins, the aura stored in the spirit stone is simply the difference between a firefly and a bright moon. The place where Lingshi is truly precious. It lies in the power of creation that is wrapped in aura inside it. It is precisely because of this power of creation that Lingshi can cultivate and promote spiritual veins, and use the spirit stone as a power source. Chen Daoxian threw away the most precious power of creation in the spirit stone. That is to say, the Rongling furnace has greatly improved the production efficiency and increased the profit dozens of times. Otherwise, he simply can't stand Chen Daoxian's prodigal behavior. Inside the factory, Chen Liangyu stopped when he saw Chen Daoxian frowning. I was a little apprehensive. He naturally didn't know that Chen Daoxian thought so far. In fact, he didn't even know what industrialization was. All he knew was to keep track of the factory's finances, and to deal with all sorts of logistical issues at the factory. "Less, young patriarch, half an hour." Chen Liangyu called out cautiously. "Oh, it's all right, let's continue." Chen Daoxian came back to his senses and said with a smile. But in the heart, he had secretly memorized the power problem and wondered how to solve it. Chapter 134. After inspecting the Feijian factory, Chen Daoxian had a rough idea of the family's current Feijian production. In general, Since the three of Qin Daoxian left the factory, a few new Taoist monks joined the factory. The increase in factory output was not large. In the past, the Hongyin Feijian factory could produce 900 Fijians per month, but now it can only produce more than 1,000 Fijians per month, an increase of only 10%. Profit from this output. Of course, it cannot meet the resource consumption caused by the growing number of cultivators in the Qin family. Therefore, the expansion of the factory is imminent. But before that, Qin Daoxian needs to solve the power problem of the factory. The first thing that came to his mind was the electricity network in his previous life. On Earth, all countries use wires to transport electricity. Although aura is completely different from electricity, as a special energy, it must also have a carrier that can carry and transport it. As long as this carrier is found, the problem of aura transportation can be solved. And the spirit stone that is depleted of spirit energy is a special material that can store spirit energy. It should be regarded as one of such special carriers. Think of this. Qin Daoxian picked up a spirit stone whose spiritual energy was exhausted. Who knows? As Qin Daoxian exerted a little force, the spirit stone that was depleted of spiritual energy was like a sandy stone, and it turned into a cloud of powder and fell on the ground. Powder. Qin Daoxian grabbed the pile of gray-white powder with his fingers from the ground. Zoom in. These white powders are small sand crystal-like particles, a bit like the sand on the earth. Each of these small particles is the size of sand. Blow it gently, and it floats all over the place. Qin Daoxian frowned and touched his chin. Next second, he used fire control. I saw a mass of white flames burst out from his palm. Since the cultivation base has been upgraded to the foundation establishment stage, this fire control technique, which has little lethality in the qi refining period, can now also pose a fatal threat to the qi refining period monks. This is the horror of cultivators' high cultivation. Obviously it is the same spell, used by high-level monks, but it can cause a fatal threat to low-level monks. While controlling the flame, he roasted the off-white powder under the flames. Soon, the off-white powder turned into a white liquid. Qin Daoxian knew. This is the result of the off-white powder being melted by high temperature. Then, he manipulated Jin Yuan and pulled the gray-white liquid into a long line the thickness of a little finger. Say it's a long line. Actually the line is less than 20 centimeters. No way, the powder that a fist-sized spirit stone turns into can only create such a long line at most. But for Qin Daoxian's experiment, enough. Wait until the long line cools and solidifies. I saw that he used his true essence to control the spiritual energy in Lingtan, and instilled it towards the end of the long line. Under the squeeze of Qin Daoxian Jinyuan, the aura easily moved from one end of the long line to the other. And under Qin Daoxian's perception, there is almost no consumption. Sure enough, Qin Daoxian was slightly overjoyed. He squeezed the long gray-white wire in his hand. It was soft in texture, not as hard as the metal wire in the previous life, but somewhat like rubber wrapped around the wire. I didn't expect that the powder formed after the spirit stone was exhausted and solidified at high temperature would turn into a substance like rubber. Qin Daoxian's eyes were filled with surprise. In this way, the problem of spiritual energy transportation is half solved. The reason is half. It's because Qin Daoxian knows that, in order to flow aura, in addition to a carrier that can transport it, it also needs a power that can push it. On Earth, this dynamic is called voltage. And here, Qin Daoxian called it Lingya for the time being. The spiritual pressure here is not the same concept as the spiritual pressure of the Rongling furnace feedback system. It refers to the pressure that activates the aura in the aura network. Pity. Qin Daoxian experimented for a long time, but to no avail. However, this experiment is probably the one that he has made the fastest progress. Which is like the past. Whether it is a Rongling furnace or a Dantian pressure reducer. It took him years. And also with the help of an epiphany state. If there is no epiphany about this plug-in, whether it can produce results in this life is a matter of two things. But this time, it only takes less than a stick of incense. He has finished the carrier spirit line for building the aura network. Have to say, sometimes doing research, luck is far more important than strength. Qin Dao Xian is a typical example this time. Wangxinghai underwater world. After untold hardships, the Sun brothers finally found the location of the black jade card in their hands in the corner of the underwater world of Guang'an Prefecture. Brother, are you here yet? Arrive. Sun Fu, the white-faced cultivator, looked at the surrounding environment and said solemnly, "This immortal mansion is as rumored, it is located in an independent secret space. You protect me, don't disturb me. Don't worry, big brother." The rough man also knows that this is the most critical moment of this trip. If this happens, maybe the two of them can soar into the sky like the real Shinjue 400 years ago. If it fails. No, it won't fail. The rough man's face became firm. In order to find this place and set foot here, their brothers have paid too much over the years. Since he got this black jade card by luck once. The two brothers had been plotting for nearly 2 decades. Finally found it here. Thoughts flipping. There seems to be a new change in the white-faced monk. I saw the white-faced cultivator named Sun Fu exclaimed, overjoyed, quick. The immortal mansion is open. Only then did the rough middle-aged cultivator see that in front of his eldest brother, a space crack suddenly opened. Accompanied by the surging of this crack, there is a large amount of extremely pure aura. Such pure spirit. Not to mention in Guang'an Prefecture, even if they were in Jingguan Xiancheng on the battlefield of Izumo, they never felt it. To know. In the 7 towns and Guanxian cities built by Qianyuan Jianzong on the battlefield of Izumo, all of them are equipped with spiritual veins above the 5th order. That is to say, in the secret realm of the immortal mansion, there is a spiritual vein that is more advanced than the 5th order spiritual vein. Posted. We posted. In the face of such terrifying wealth, even the mansion of a white-faced cultivator could not calm down at this moment. Present. The two did not dare to delay, and flew directly into the space crack. Next second. The space crack closed suddenly, as if nothing had happened. After the Sun brothers entered the immortal mansion, I wandered around in the secret territory of Xianfu for several hours. This turned out to be a little different from what I imagined. Brother, where is the spiritual vein? The white-faced monks also felt that something was wrong. The large amount of pure spiritual energy they sensed just now was not produced by the spiritual veins. It is the rootless duckweed stored in the secret territory of this immortal mansion. Discover this fact. The two were suddenly disappointed. Forget it, anyway, we are here this time, not for the spiritual veins, let's find the immortal inheritance first. The white-faced monk said solemnly. The area of this immortal mansion cheat book is huge. The two spent several days wandering inside before they found a palace suspected to be inhabited by immortals. This palace is extremely majestic, hundreds of meters high. The two Sun brothers stood in front of the palace like an ant. The two of them tiptoed open the gate of the palace. Step into it slowly. Enter the palace. The two found a corpse sitting in the palace. What a corpse it is. Silver hair, golden eyes, jade bones, the body is immortal for hundreds of millions of years. Although the Sun brothers didn't know how old the corpse was, the moment they saw it, the two fell to the ground unconsciously. That is the respect from the heart of the seeker after seeing the Taoist. This kneeling, involuntarily, but also from the heart. However, the two did not find out at all. Not far from the corpse, there was a silver coffin. Now, the lid of the coffin moved slightly. But the two were completely attracted by the immortal's corpse in front of them, and didn't notice the changes in the coffin. A long time. The two recovered from the shock. Big brother, the corpse of the immortal is here, it really is the immortal mansion, it really is the immortal mansion. Look for the inheritance. The white-faced cultivator couldn't care less about being indifferent, and said anxiously. At this moment, a cold and terrifying voice that seemed to freeze the soul of a person sounded behind the two of them. Jia Jia, what are you looking for? Who? The white-faced cultivator's son Fu turned his head sharply, but the scene in front of him almost scared him to pieces. I see. A 10,000-year-old corpse king with black suffocation and blood entanglement is staring at the two with green eyes. You are the real god. For the famous Shinju real person. Even after 400 years had passed, Sun Fu still recognized him from his appearance at a glance. However, the other party has now turned into a zombie. Jia Jia, you haven't told me, what are you looking for? Chapter 135. Shuanghu Island. Hongyin Feijian Factory. Qin Daoxian stood in front of a melting furnace. At this time, this Rongling furnace has been working for more than 10 hours. Qin Daoxian's consciousness swept away. It was known that the refining of several second-order water attribute spiritual minerals in the Rongling furnace was completed, and it was about to be taken out of the furnace. Next. Shape, melt formation. Qin Daoxian has long been familiar with the road. Thanks to the transformation of true essence and divine consciousness, it is now extremely easy for Qin Daoxian to refine second-order high-grade instruments. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have a third-order magic weapon inheritance in his hand. With his true essence far exceeding that of the late foundation building cultivator, and his divine sense comparable to that of the Zifu cultivator, he can try to refine a Tier 3 flying sword. Pfft! A mouthful of blood essence was sprayed on the water-type flying sword embryo engraved with the 18th formation pattern. Next second. Essence and blood and patterns slowly merged into the Dao sword embryo. Feijian refining successfully. Immediately revolved around Qin Daoxian like a bird returning to its nest. Looked at the second-order high-grade flying sword that was very cheerful and unusual in front of him. Qin Daoxian took out the broken Feishue sword from the storage bag and said, from now on, I'll call you Feishue, finished. He treasured Feishue sword and put it in his storage bag. The following few days. Qin Daoxian did the same and refined the second-tier high-grade wind attribute flying sword. This mouth attribute flying sword was also named Qingying sword by him. After refining 2 natal flying swords, Qin Daoxian couldn't wait to practice Yujian and fly immediately. For Edgeworth flying, Qin Daoxian has long been envious. Even before he established the foundation, he had already purchased a suitable flying sword technique in Guang'an Prefecture. The name of this light is called Jinguang Huahong. A very common technique of flying with the sword. But for Qin Daoxian, who was flying with the sword for the first time, the feeling is definitely different. Because before that, he was flying using the wind control technique. Although Qin Daoxian was actually able to fly with his sword after the first tempering of his infuriating energy. Because at that time, his true qi was at least 3 times stronger than that of ordinary cultivators in the late stage of qi refining. But at that time he was preoccupied with building the foundation. How can I have time to study the flying of the sword? Because Yu Jian's flying speed is extremely fast, far exceeding the wind control of monks in the refining period. Therefore, even if there is a base-building cultivator who can't beat the qi-refining cultivator, it is impossible for the qi-refining cultivator to do anything to the foundation-building cultivator. After all, someone else's sword light flashed, and it immediately turned into a light and flew away. Qi-refining cultivators rely on the wind-fighting technique, so they can't even eat ashes in the back. The next day, Qin Daoxian's life has returned to peace again. Because he had just broken through to foundation establishment, Chen Daoxian was hardly in a hurry to practice the foundation establishment period, but chose to polish his newly broken through true qi. At this point, is especially important for sword cultivators. This is also mentioned in Zhou Mubai's Kendo Inheritance Jade Slip. After the sword cultivator has tempered his true essence, remember not to rush to practice attribute exercises. It is only when the sword essence is polished to the level of ordinary real essence that it is like an arm and a finger, before choosing to practice the foundation building stage. Only in this way will it not affect the speed of subsequent cultivation. Sword intent will make the real essence stronger after tempering, and it will also increase the difficulty of cultivation. In fact, this principle is basically universal. The power of the top-level exercises means that the true essence cultivated is stronger than that of the monks of the same level. But at the same time, it is also the most difficult to practice top-level exercises. Like the kind of exercises that are easy to practice and powerful, you can only find them in your dreams. Therefore, cultivators need to be very careful when they choose to switch to practice after the foundation is established. Because this will affect a monk's future path. For monks, it is not that the stronger the power of the exercises, the better. Some people have bad aptitude. It was a fluke to be able to build a foundation. At this time, he chose to choose those powerful exercises, which often made it difficult to practice after the foundation was established, and even stuck in the tragic situation of being unable to advance an inch in the initial stage of foundation building. At this moment, it is easy for others to choose to cultivate, but the exercises with mediocre power may have entered the middle stage of foundation establishment or the later stage of foundation establishment. Even if it is the same level. When others practice weak exercises, they are not your opponents, but it is not easy for others to beat you in the early stage. More importantly, others will have more chances to break through to Zifu than you. This is the most important. After all, the primary goal of a monk's practice is basically to achieve longevity. If there is no such thing as a catastrophe, maybe no one will choose to practice powerful but difficult exercises. Sequoia Island. A ray of light instantly cut through the sky. Landed on the Wanghai Pavilion. Looking at the endless sea, Chen Daoxian could only feel the joy in his chest. 2 months. In addition to his busy family affairs. Basically all of his energy is used to practice the sword light Huaihong escape technique. After 6 full epiphanies, he finally cultivated this technique to a perfect state. At this moment, he used this technique, and in the eyes of outsiders, it was really fast like a rainbow light. Is almost not much slower than the speed of the Zifu cultivator. This is why it will be judged like this. It was because Chen Daoxian had been on the Zhou family's Spirit Void battleship and knew how fast the Zifu cultivator was escaping. He felt that his speed was no less than the fastest speed of the Spirit Void battleship. Looked at the sea scenery. Chen Daoxian's Jianguang volume. Flew back towards Shuanghu Island. Less than a few hundred interest. Chen Daoxian's escape light spanned a distance of 400 miles and landed in the spiritual vein of Shuanghu Island. Compared to before, his speed was dozens of times faster. Just when he was excited and had a great time playing, Chen Xianhe found him. Has Lingrui City been built? Chen Daoxian looked at Chen Xianhe in surprise. Think carefully. The Yang family proposed to build Lingrui City, but it was only 2 or 3 years ago. So fast. In just 2 or 3 years, a fairy city was built. Just don't know. What price did the Guang'an Immortal Alliance, led by the Yang family, pay in order to build the Lingri Immortal City? Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian smiled and said, since it's completed, let's go and see the excitement. Compared to before the foundation, Chen Daoxian became much calmer after successfully building the foundation. He knows. All of this comes from his own strength. During the qi refining period, he can be invincible even during the qi refining period. But in Guang'an Prefecture, being invincible during the qi refining period is far from enough. There are thousands of foundation building cultivators in the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture alone, and the entire Guang'an Prefecture is counted as scattered cultivators, and there are tens of thousands of foundation building cultivators. That's it. Not counting the loose cultivators and foundation cultivators on the front lines of Izumo. There are so many base-building cultivators, and the previous Qin Dao Xian is basically no match for any of them. And now, with him, he built the foundation of the strongest swordsmanship. The realm of Kendo has skyrocketed. Qin Dao Xian dare not say that he can match the cultivator of Zifu, but among the cultivators of the foundation building, he basically can't find an opponent. Look at it this way. The huge Guang'an mansion, only the Zhou family, the Yang family, the Wu family, and the Zhao family can really be in the eyes of Qin Dao Xian. Even in addition to the Zhou family and the Yang family, there are cultivators in Zifu. The Wu family and the Zhao family are just a little more cultivator of the foundation. In front of the current Qin Dao Xian, the cultivator of the foundation is just a chicken and a dog, not worth mentioning. Chapter 136, Months Later. A ray of light pierced the sky. That's Jinwu Island sky. Qin Dao Xian, who was dressed in white, pointed to the circular island below, like a big sun falling on the sea, and introduced. Jinwu Island of the Yang family. Qin Xianhe nodded. I've only heard of its name for a long time, and this is my first time here. Speaking of which, Qin Xianhe sighed. Guang'an Mansion is really too big. If a cultivator wants to travel all over the Guang'an Mansion during the qi refining period, it may not be possible to drive a boat for several months. Which is like a monk in the foundation establishment period, who can fly with light, said, looking at Qin Dao Xian and the sword light under his feet with admiration. The second-order high-grade shadow-carrying sword, the sword glow that erupts can reach a length of more than 9 feet. At this moment, this second-order flying sword burst out with a sword beam several feet long, wrapping the two figures, and breaking through the wind in the sky. Hearing this, Qin Dao Xian nodded and said, the foundation building cultivator is indeed much faster than the qi refining cultivator. The last time I came here, I had to come here nearly a month earlier. Like today, we arrived in less than half a day. Talking room. Jinwu Island is getting closer. Qin Dao Xian immediately lowered his light and flew towards the newly built Lingrui Immortal City on Jinwu Island. On the vast plains of Jinwu Island not far from the harbor, a huge fairy city stands here. Although compared with the Immortal City of Guang'an Prefecture, this Immortal City is slightly inferior in scale. But the aura inside is no less than that of Guang'an House. Even because the Guang'an Immortal League has released most of the restrictions on spiritual eyes, the concentration of spiritual energy in the entire Spirit Day City is even higher than that of Guang'an Mansion. And although the scale of Lingrui City is smaller than that of Guang'an Prefecture Xiancheng, its popularity does not seem to be low at all. May have been informed in advance that Lingrui City was completely built today. The scattered cultivators who settled on the spiritual veins of the Guang'an Xianmeng for thousands of miles came over to cheer. In the past 2 or 3 years, how many scattered cultivators have chosen to settle in the spiritual veins established by the Guang'an Immortal League? According to the rough estimate of the Zhou family, in the entire Guang'an Prefecture, at least more than 30% of the loose cultivators have come to settle in the spiritual veins of the Guang'an Immortal League. Judging from the total number of millions of scattered cultivators in Guang'an Prefecture, the stray cultivators who went to Lingrui City today, there are millions of people. Even surpassed the flow of people in Xiancheng, Guang'an Prefecture. Near Lingrui City, the light in the sky suddenly became more and more. In the past, when I was practicing qi, I was always envious when I saw these lights whizzing through the air. Become one of them today. Qin Dao Xian felt very strange. The light fell. Qin Dao Xian and Qin Xianhe landed at the gate of Lingrui City. Is the same as the Immortal City of Guang'an. Lingri City also adopts the method of inner and outer cities. The outer city is an open city inhabited by mortals, which can always expand outwards, while the inner city is where the immortal city is located, built on a third-order spiritual vein. The reason why the city wall was built. Of course, not to defend against foreign enemies, but to isolate mortals and monks. To some extent. Is also a kind of protection for mortals by major forces. Because the monk's strength is too strong, mortals are not much different from ants in front of them. If the two are not separated, and if the immortals and the mortals are completely mixed together, the mortals are easily oppressed by the monks. Maybe even slaughtered by some monks with bad temperament. And so, even if the major spiritual forces punished the cultivator who committed the crime afterwards, the damage already caused is irreversible. Therefore, the major powers of practice build immortal cities, and they will not mix monks and mortals together. Even from family members. Lingri City Gate. Compared with the city wall that cannot be seen at a glance, the city gate of Lingrui City is equally wide. Visual inspection. At least tens of zhang wide and nearly 100 zhang high, no smaller than the city gate of Guang'an Prefecture. And there are 9 such city gates in the entire Spirit Sun City. Such giant walls and giant gates. It can only be built by the power of monks. If it is replaced by ordinary mortals, even mortals in the congenital stage cannot build it at all. Chen Daoxian glanced at the long queue of cultivators in the qi refining period, waiting at the gate of the city. He and Qin Xianhe stood at the gate dedicated to the cultivators of the Foundation establishment period and withdrew their gazes. Senior, please go inside. At the gate of the city, a cultivator of the Yang family in the late stage of qi refining, respectfully bowed his hands to Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian nodded, and together with Qin Xianhe, walked into Lingrui City with his head held high. Enter Lingrui City. The two walked around for several hours. Only then did I feel the prosperity of Lingrui City. Although Lingrui City has just been built, the families of Guang'an Xianmeng have spared no effort in making Lingrui City popular. All kinds of resources in each store's inventory are sold. For a while, the major shops of Lingrui City are filled with various kinds of goods. Is not inferior to the scene when the Guang'an Prefecture Xianqing held an auction. On the street, pedestrian monks rubbing shoulders, crowded. Qin Daoxian had a feeling of rushing to the Chunyun railway station in his previous life. Just after sensing his cultivation, none of the cultivators dared to squeeze him. Circled around him, forming a vacuum layer. Qin Daoxian knew. This is the awe of the low-level monks to the high-level monks. This kind of reverence stems from the ability of high-level monks to completely crush low-level monks. The two were hanging out in the room. Qin Daoxian and Qin Xianhe chatted. Qin Xianhe sighed, it seems that Lingrui City has really become a climate. Yes, Qin Daoxian nodded. Although he had expected the achievements of Lingrui City, he still did not expect it to come so quickly and so fiercely. The establishment of Lingrui City also had a greater impact on the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture than imagined. Now, I don't know how the Zhou family will respond, hear this. Qin Xianhe couldn't help frowning. The dispute between the Zhou family and the Guang'an Xianmeng, the Qin family, as a newly emerging foundation-building family, is undoubtedly the last thing they want to see. Of course. If the two tigers really want to fight, it will not be good for the Qin family. Then it depends on the ability of the person at the helm of the Qin family to jump left and right. At this point, Qin Daoxian also saw how those small countries survived in the cracks of big countries in his previous life. Is not without experience. Of course. The current Qin family, Qin Daoxian alone, is not weak among all the foundation-building families in Guang'an Prefecture. A sword cultivator who can be called invincible in the foundation-building period. Even a new Zifu family like the Yang family has to pay attention. The current Guang'an Prefecture. On the family background, Chen Daoxian roughly divided it into 5 grades. The one in the first gear is naturally the Zhou family. All the clans in Guang'an Prefecture combined cannot compete with the Zhou clan. The second tier of is the Yang family, Wu family, and Zhao family, the newly promoted Zifu family and the foundation building family. The third gear is the ordinary foundation building family. These foundation building families have dozens to hundreds of foundation building monks, and the entire family has tens of thousands of monks. The fourth grade of is those small families who are lucky enough to become the foundation building family. For example, in some qi refining family, 2 people broke through the foundation building stage, or a small family with only dozens or hundreds of qi refining cultivators broke through to the foundation building stage on the battlefield of Izumo. The Mo family back then, if the patriarch entered the foundation building stage, he could probably be classified into this level. The last level, the 5th level, is all the qi refining families. Of course, there are strong and weak points in the qi refining family. For example, the Mo family back then had nearly 100 qi refining cultivators, and even a patriarch who was near the foundation building stage. The weak ones were like the Chen family more than 5 years ago, with only 1 or 2 qi refining cultivators. If the current Chen family were to be divided, they could probably be classified into the 3rd tier. Is also an ordinary foundation building family with dozens or hundreds of foundation building monks in the clan. Because in terms of strength, Chen Daoxian alone is enough to surpass dozens or hundreds of monks at the foundation stage. From the perspective of the background, the monks of the Qin Jiafu generation have sprung up like mushrooms after a rain and continue to grow. The profit earned by the family in the magic weapon market has also continued to hit new highs every year. From this angle, can even rank the Qin family at the forefront of the 3rd-tier family. Of course, although the Qin family has this strength, in terms of the current prestige, it is far from matching its strength. The reasons for this are complicated. There is a reason why the Chen family keeps a low profile and immerses themselves in development. There is also the reason why Chen Daoxian succeeded in building a foundation and became the 2nd sword cultivator in Guang'an Prefecture after Zhou Mubai, but it was not known to the outside world. The waiter in charge of the reception was a foundation building cultivator. He looked at Chen Daoxian with a surprised look on his face, and immediately opened the invitation card that Chen Daoxian handed over, nodded and said, "Fellow Taoist, please go up the mountain." "Thank you." Chen Daoxian nodded. "Wait." Just as Chen Daoxian raised his footsteps, he was stopped by the other party. "Fellow Taoist, forgive me, this celebration is a banquet invited by my Guang'an Xianmeng to the major foundation building families. I also ask this fellow Taoist to stay." After speaking, he stopped in front of Qin Xianhe and shook his head slightly. When Chen Daoxian heard this, his face suddenly turned cold. "What do you mean, fellow Taoist? Could it be that you are trying to make things difficult for us?" "My fellow Taoist, forgive me." The other party just dropped this sentence and no longer explained it. But the attitude is very firm, that is, not to let Qin Xianhe pass. Just when Chen Daoxian was about to turn his face, a charming voice sounded from the front, "Isn't this fellow Taoist Chen heard?" Chen Daoxian turned his head to the side and saw Yang Gongwan in the front left, his expression still cold. He was invited by the Yang family to participate in the celebration of Spirit Sun City, but he was harassed by the cultivator who was in charge of welcoming him. "Fairy Yang, long time no see." Chen Daoxian bowed his hands stiffly. Sorry, Yang Gongwan smiled and said, "This celebration is so busy that I forgot to say hello to fellow Taoist Wu." Immediately, Yang Gongwan changed his words and said, "I haven't seen you for a few years." Dao Yu Chen is not only in good spirits, but also has successfully established his foundation. It's really gratifying to congratulate, talking. She introduced Chen Daoxian. "This is Dao Yu Wu from Fengwu Island, and this is Dao Yu Chen from Shuanghu Island." Gong Wan apologized to the two of them again, and it was all my fault for being negligent, which almost made the two of them unhappy. Having said that, Yang Gongwan bowed to Qin Daoxian and the Wu family cultivator. It's all about this. When Qin Daoxian pursued it further, it seemed that he was messing around. The Wu family cultivator seemed to be quite fascinated by Yang Gongwan, and there was a trace of greed hidden in the depths of his eyes when he looked at her. Then he apologized to Qin Daoxian and said, "It turns out that fellow Daoist was invited by the Yang family, but just now he was abrupt." After speaking, the fake orangutan bowed to Qin Daoxian. "No problem." Qin Daoxian replied coldly. "Say it." Qin Daoxian walked up the mountain with Qin Xianhe. "Fellow Daoist Qin, how about a pier?" Yang Gongwan said, and chased after Qin Daoxian. On the stairs. Several people have been silent. A long time. Qin Daoxian said quietly, "Fairy Yang is a good way." Chapter 138. Boom. 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 The melodious bells rang on the Lingshan mountain of Guang'an Xianmeng. It heralds the beginning of the celebration. Numerous monks from the foundation building period gathered together, standing on the square in front of the main palace, in groups of 3 and 5, chatting with each other. Most of the foundation building cultivators usually practice in their respective families, and the number of public appearances is not comparable to that of the chi refining cultivators. Therefore, this celebration of the completion of Lingrui city can be regarded as a rare gathering of the monks who build the foundation. As a new foundation building family, the Qin family is not well known among the many foundation building families in Guang'an Prefecture, but no one took the initiative to approach him and talk to the two of them. "Brother Qin." Just as he was thinking that no one was talking, a call came from behind him. "Back." A young figure appeared in front of Qin Daoxian. This person looks like he is in his 20s, with peach blossom eyes and a slightly frivolous smile on the corner of his mouth. "Who is Zhou Xiliang, the son of Zhou Muqing?" "Brother Zhou." Qin Daoxian reacted immediately and congratulated Zhou Xiliang. "Congratulations to Zhou Xiliang for his successful foundation building." The same joy." Zhou Xiliang's success in building a foundation surprised Qin Daoxian. "But the last time I saw him, Zhou Xiliang was already at the 9th level of qi refining, and it was not too surprising that the foundation was successfully established now." Zhou Xiliang greeted Qin Daoxian and hurriedly greeted Qin Xian. "Xiliang has seen Uncle Qin." "Good good." Qin Xianhe stroked his beard with a smile, and said, "Looking at your appearance, you must have come with Brother Zhou." "Uncle Zhou is here too." Hearing this, Zhou Si nodded his head. "My father is indeed here." Speaking of this, Zhou Xiliang's words flickered a bit. Qin Daoxian didn't care and said with a smile, "In that case, let's meet up together." Zhou Muqing was very helpful to the Qin family back then. If it weren't for Zhou Muqing's influence, the Qin family would not have imagined that it would be so easy to take over the magic weapon market in Sangxiafang City, Guang'an Prefecture. "This time since we met, it is necessary to come forward and say hello." When Zhou Xiliang heard this, he hesitated for a while before nodding and saying, "Then I will bring the two of you there, please." Under the guidance of Zhou Xiliang, Qin Daoxian and Qin Xianhe met Zhou Muqing and the monks of the patrol fleet under his command. Qin Daoxian is quite familiar with these people, and has drunk a lot of wine with them. "Uncle Zhou." Seeing Zhou Muqing, Qin Daoxian smiled and bowed his hands. Daoxian, seeing Qin Daoxian, the worry on Zhou Muqing's face quickly subsided, and he looked at him in surprise and said, "Have you established a foundation?" "Lucky." Qin Daoxian smiled and cupped his hands. "Brother Zhou." "Brother Qin." After seeing the ceremony with Qin Xianhe, Zhou Muqing continued, "Unexpectedly, in less than 4 years, you actually cultivated all the way from the 7th level of qi refining to the foundation building stage, and I am afraid that the Zifu will be promising in the future." Uncle Zhou is wrong. Chen Daoxian bowed his hands. Brother Xiliang is the dragon among men, and the Zifu can be expected in the future. Zhou Muqing felt great comfort when he heard Chen Daoxian praise his son. In his heart, the baby son's ability to build a foundation was indeed beyond his expectations. Originally, he thought that he would be satisfied if he could use resources to smash his son to the foundation building stage within 10 years. I didn't expect it to take just over 3 years. Zhou Xiliang actually took a foundation building pill by himself, secretly building foundation without his knowledge, and it was successful. Every time I think about it. While Zhou Mu was proud to be his son, he was also afraid. Although the success rate of foundation building Dan is 70% to 80%, once the foundation building fails, the Dantian Qi Si will be broken, and the consequences will be very serious. But luckily, Zhou Xiliang succeeded. Of course. Zhou Xiliang's aptitude Zhou Muqing knew in his heart, no accident, being able to build a foundation is the limit of his life. Z mansion or something, if there is no great chance, it is no different from a dream. Uncle Zhou, are you here also to celebrate the completion of Lingrui City? Chen Daoxian was quite surprised. It stands to reason that with the establishment of Lingzhou City, the Zhou family should not be furious, right? Why is there still time to send someone to celebrate? This is obviously not the Zhou family's way of doing things. Chen Xianhe on the side coughed when he heard the words. Chen Daoxian turned his head, but saw Chen Xianhe shaking his head at him. Brother Chen doesn't have to cover for me, Zhou Muqing sighed and smiled bitterly. I came this time to apologize to the Wu family on behalf of the Zhou family. Apologize to the Wu family? The more Chen Daoxian listened, the more confused he became. Obviously, he had been living on Shuanghu Island during this period of time, and something happened in Guang'an Prefecture that he didn't know about. Ugh! Zhou Muqing sighed, speaking of which, we are also unlucky. 2 months ago, the Wu family had a cargo ship full of second-order artifacts and spiritual ore to Guang'an Prefecture, but an accident happened on the way. What does it have to do with the Wu family's cargo ship carrying the magical instruments? Chen Daoxian frowned. Daoxian, you don't know, it's not just the cargo ships that transport the instruments, because the Wu family's goods are very valuable, so they sent a large number of monks to them. Just the Wu family's foundation building monks, there are 136 people. What? Hearing this, Chen Daoxian could no longer contain his surprise. More than 100 cultivators of the foundation establishment period died in Guang'an Mansion, and even their bodies could not be found. This kind of thing is too sensational. There are more than 100 foundation building cultivators. Even if the cultivator of Zifu personally takes action, whether they can win the other party is a matter of two things. Even if they are not the opponents of the Zifu cultivator, so many base-building cultivators have fled in the light of the light, so it's not impossible for all of them to escape, right? Although Zifu is strong, it is not strong enough to kill more than 100 foundation-building cultivators in seconds. At least Chen Daoxian and Zifu cultivator fought once. He knew very well that Zifu cultivator was not that strong. In particular, the Wu family was good at refining weapons, and their foundation-building monks must have spirit armor to protect themselves. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for the Wu family's foundation-building cultivator to escape, which was obviously not something ordinary cultivators of the Zifu could do. Could it be Jindan cultivator? Chen Daoxian was taken aback by his speculation. Impossible. But then, Chen Daoxian shook his head again. Not to mention that there are no Jindan cultivators in Guang'an Mansion. Even if Jindan cultivators from outside Sangzhou pass by Guang'an Mansion, it is impossible for them to attack a group of foundation-building cultivators for no reason. Isn't this giving the handle to Qianyuan Jianzong? This matter is really going to go up. It is impossible for Qianyuan Jianzong to find out. To know. Qianyuan Jianzong has a spell called Time Recall, and they want to escape their pursuit unless they use special means to disrupt the secret. Obviously, it is impossible for ordinary Jindan cultivators to have this ability. After thinking about it, Chen Daoxian couldn't come up with a result. But, what does this have to do with you, Uncle Zhou? Chen Daoxian was very puzzled. Hearing this, Zhou Xiliang on the side sighed and said helplessly, my father happened to be in charge of the safety of the route that the Wu family cultivators traveled on that day. Hear this. Chen Daoxian finally figured out the cause and effect of the matter. The Wu family lost more than 100 foundation-building cultivators, and lost a ship of magic tools and spiritual ore. And Zhou Muqing of the Zhou family happened to be in charge of the safety of the route that the Wu family sailed at that time. This incident has caused a lot of uproar in Guang'an Prefecture, and now my family, large and small, in Xiancheng, Guang'an Prefecture, is doubting my Zhou family's ability to protect the safety of the airline. When Zhou Muqing said this, he clenched his fists tightly. In fact, he also knew that it was fortunate that they were not present that day, otherwise it would have just added a few more bodies. A figure that the more than 100 foundation-building cultivators of the Wu family could not bear. What can the more than 20 foundation establishment monks on a mere spirit void battleship do? Things say so. But other family panics belong to them. Because all the other families are now suspecting that this was done by the Zhou family. Just because the Wu family is one of the main members of the Guang'an Immortal League. In order to retaliate against the Wu family, the Zhou family killed all the monks who transported goods in his family, killing the chickens and serving as an example. Force the families to withdraw from the Guang'an Immortal League. Actually, as long as anyone with a brain thinks about this matter, they will know that it cannot be done by the Zhou family. Because of the existence of Qianyuan sword sect, it is impossible for the Zhou family to take such a big risk to do this. But the question is, if it's not the Zhou family, who has the strength and motivation to do this? At present, this incident has not been spread among the scattered cultivation, otherwise the impact will be even worse. The Zhou family's food looks so ugly, who would dare to go to the immortal city of Guang'an in the future? It's not that no one has thought about whether it will be directed and acted by the people of Guang'an Xianmeng. But on second thought, who would sacrifice the lives of more than 100 foundation establishment cultivators for acting? That was nearly a quarter of the foundation-building cultivators in the Wu family. Because of this incident, the Wu family was completely devastated, and I am afraid that it will be difficult to restore the past glory in the future. Just among a few people talking. The celebration of Spirit Day City begins. On the square. Yang Linyuan, who was dressed in a gray Taoist robe, stepped on the auspicious clouds and flew up. Chen Daoxian knew that the auspicious cloud under his feet was not a real auspicious cloud, but a special flying instrument. But at this moment, when it is displayed in front of everyone, it reflects the word Xianfeng Daogu incisively and vividly. Really? Everyone was attracted by Yang Ancestor, and they all quieted down. Thank you, fellow Taoists, for coming to the celebration of the inauguration of my Spirit Day Immortal City, today. Above the auspicious clouds, Yang Linyuan smiled and talked eloquently. Hopefully, in the future, we can work together to make Lingrui City even more prosperous. Just finished speaking. Yang Linyuan was about to leave, but unexpectedly, a voice suddenly sounded at this moment. Wait everyone. The person who spoke was an old man with a complete foundation. The old man had a broad face and a broad nose, a solemn face, and a look of no anger and self-righteousness. Coupled with his tall and straight figure, it made people look quite oppressive. Seeing the old man, Yang Linyuan sighed and said through a voice transmission, Brother Wu, how about we discuss this matter later? I, Yang, hereby swear that I will definitely get justice for the more than 100 cultivators of your Wu family, heard. Wu Guangyi shook his head, Brother Yang, my Wu family wants this justice today. As he said that, his face was tragic, otherwise, the hearts of my Wu family will be completely dissipated. Chapter 139. Seeing the figure of the old man, all the monks who knew the inside story stopped. Wu Guangyi watched everyone stop, bowed his hands to everyone, and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoists, for your righteousness. I, Mr. Wu, hereby thank you all." Talking. Wu Guangyi bowed his hands to all the monks present. At this time, a cultivator off the field said, "Don't worry, fellow Taoist Wu, my Guang'an mansion cultivator has not been cowardly to this level." Talking room. The rough-faced late-stage foundation building cultivator had an indifferent expression. Obviously, this was a foundation building loose cultivator. "Thank you, fellow Taoist Lei, for your righteous words." Wu Guangyi clearly recognized the loose cultivator who was speaking and cupped his hands. "Everyone, 2 months ago, 136 members of my Wu family transported a ship of second-order magic tools and spiritual ore to the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture, but something unexpected happened on the way. I would like to ask everyone present, how could the more than 100 foundation building cultivators with spirit armors die on the way to Guang'an Mansion? In our Guang'an Prefecture, who can have this strength? The guts?" Wu Guangyi's voice was deafening, and the whole person was furious. Zhou Muqing's chest heaved up and down when he heard this. But he knew that at this moment, whether it was for the family or himself, he had to stand up. "Brother Wu, if you have something to say, please say it clearly, you don't have to point at Sang and scold why." "Okay." Wu Guangyi shouted, "I suspect your Zhou family. All this is done by your Zhou family." He stood in the air, pointed his hand directly at Zhou Muqing's nose, and said loudly. This moment, the hearts of all the cultivators present twitched. The Wu family is the pillar family of the Guang'an Immortal League, and the other is the representative of the Zhou family, the overlord of Guang'an Prefecture. "Brother Wu, do you know what you are talking about?" Zhou Muqing's mood suddenly calmed down at this moment, staring at the other side intently. "Of course I know what I'm talking about." Wu Guangyi shouted, "Brother Yang told me, let me bear it, and the strength of my Wu family also told me, let me bear it. But I am the patriarch of the tens of thousands of monks in the Wu family. More than 100 cultivators of my Wu family died inexplicably. I can't bear this tone, and my Wu family's tens of thousands of cultivators can't bear it. Wu Guangyi, you and I were considered to have been on the Zenangwan battlefield together back then, you should know who I am. Would you believe me if I told you that this was not my Zhou family's doing?" Zhou Muqing said seriously. "Heard." Wu Guangyi's eyes flickered, obviously, he was extremely restless at the moment. "Okay." Wu Guangyi nodded, "I'll believe what you said for the time being, then tell me, when you were the deacon of the Wu family patrol fleet, why did more than 100 cultivators in my Wu family die? Not only did you not rescue them, but you didn't even know it at all." Hearing this, Zhou Muqing was completely speechless. No matter what happened, his dereliction of duty was inescapable. Even if the matter is resolved, his status in the Zhou family will plummet in the future. "Brother Wu, I'm sorry." Zhou Muqing bowed his hands, and the whole person seemed to have aged a bit. Seeing the appearance of this old brother who was in the same defense zone with him back then, Wu Guangyi opened his mouth, but couldn't say a word. Half an hour. Wu Guangyi took a deep breath and said with red eyes, "It's useless for you to apologize to me, you are not qualified, I want Zhou Mubai to apologize. I want Zhou Mubai to swear that this is not the Zhou family's actions." Boom. This sentence immediately caused an uproar at the scene. Who is Zhou Mubai? Guang'an Sword Immortal, Zifu Tianjiao List Tianjiao, Zhou family young patriarch. That is the pride of the entire Zhou family. Wu Guangyi asked Zhou Mubai to apologize to the Wu family, which undoubtedly stepped on the Zhou family's face. Not only that, Wu Guangyi even made Zhou Mubai swear. You must know that the oath in the mouth of the monk generally refers to the oath of the Great Way. This kind of oath cannot be made indiscriminately, and a little mistake will inevitably affect the road. Therefore, basically not many monks are willing to take this oath. Old Ghost Wu, don't deceive people too much. Hearing this, Zhou Muqing was also angry, and made Zhou Mubai swear that if he dared to go back and say this, the Zhou family would tear him alive. I deceived your Zhou family today, what's wrong? I don't believe it, in front of thousands of fellow practitioners on the court today, your Zhou family can silence so many of us. Zhou Mucheng, Guang'an Mansion is the Guang'an Mansion of Qianyuan Sword Sect, not your Zhou families. Wu Guangyi glared angrily. You. Zhou Mucheng was so angry that he was speechless when he heard these words of heart-punching. He said in a low voice, "What do you want? Say something." I said, "Let Zhou Mubai apologize and swear that this is not the Zhou family's doing." Wu Guangyi did not give in. "Old Ghost Wu, you know, this is impossible." Zhou Mucheng calmed down again. "Why don't you be like this, you and I bet once." "Bet what?" Wu Guangyi raised his brows and said. "Bet my life." Zhou Mucheng looked at the other party. "You and I are both cultivators, since we can't agree, let's judge right or wrong based on strength. If I lose, my life will be given to you, and your Wu family will never mention this again." "Father." Zhou Xiaoyang, who was beside him, became anxious when he heard this. Zhou Mucheng glanced at his son dotingly, and immediately resolutely said, "If I win, your Wu family must not mention this again in the future. Hear this." Wu Guangyi looked directly at the other party and said, "Are you sure you want to bet your life and death with me?" "Brother Wu," Zhou Mucheng cupped his hands, "you are the head of the Wu clan, I am a member of the Zhou clan, you and I are both family members, there is no right or wrong, if there is a chance in the next life, Zhenengguan will fight again." "Okay." Wu Guangyi took a deep breath and nodded, "If there is a chance in the next life, we must fight again." In fact, Wu Guangyi already faintly believed in his heart at this moment that this matter was not done by the Zhou family. But the people of the Wu family didn't believe it, and the comrades in Guang'an didn't believe it. He is the head of the Wu family, he must unite the hearts of the people, and he must maintain the face of the Wu family in front of his colleagues in Guang'an. Because this is the last thing the Wu family has. Losing these, just as Wu Guangyi said, the family's heart will be scattered. To get these, Zhou Mubai's apology and swearing are naturally the best. But if not, the life of a Zhou family base-building cultivator is not bad. Seeing the two make a life and death pact. Those present knew that this was probably the end of the matter. It doesn't matter if this is what the Zhou family did or not. The life of a Zhou family foundation-building cultivator was the Zhou family's biggest concession to the Guang'an Mansion comrades. See this scene. Yang Linyuan sighed. Regardless of the outcome of this matter, the confrontation between the Guang'an Xianmeng and the Zhou family will be irreversible. To be honest. In the depths of Yang Linyuan's heart at this moment, he faintly regretted the creation of Guang'an Xianmeng. Because of this alliance, it may cause a turmoil that will bring disaster to the entire Guang'an prefecture. A troubled autumn. Yang Linyuan sighed. High in the air. Zhou Mucheng and Wu Guangyi confronted each other in the air. All around, tens of thousands of Guang'an Manor's foundation-building cultivators watched from the sky. Unexpectedly, today you and I will be able to fight once in front of our colleagues in Guang'an. Zhou Mucheng looked at the monks around and laughed in a hoarse voice. It's really unexpected. Wu Guangyi nodded. I didn't even expect that 50 years ago, you were on the 7th floor of the foundation building. 50 years later, you are still on the 7th floor of the foundation building. Why, the more you live, the more you go back. Zhou Mucheng also relaxed at the moment, shrugged and said, it would be good to be able to escape with one life back then, but there is no cost at all. Hear this. Wu Guangyi's voice was low. Actually, I know that this matter is not your Zhou family's actions, but I have no choice, Brother Zhou, sorry, heard. Zhou Mucheng smiled, it's not necessary, you and I are each family, no need to apologize. With that said, he finally glanced at his son Zhou Xiaoyang and said, it's up to you to live or die, come on. Okay. Wu Guangyi's words fell. A body of spirit armor appeared. Obviously, In the face of Zhou Mucheng, a 7-layer foundation building cultivator, even though his cultivation was 3 layers higher, he did not dare to be careless. Opposite, Zhou Mucheng also appeared in spirit armor. The streamlined spirit armor wraps the figures of the two, looking like steel warriors. Next moment, the two sword lights collided. Chen Daoxian looked at Zhou Xiliang beside him, anxious like an ant on a hot pot, and comforted, "Don't worry, Uncle Zhou has spirit armor on his body, even if he loses, his life will not be in danger." Relief to hear this. Zhou Xiliang is like a drowning person grabbing the last straw. He kept repeating in his mouth, "Yes, yes, my father has a spirit armor to protect himself, and Mr. Wu can't do anything with him." Saying that, the whole person could not help but relax. Actually, Chen Daoxian didn't tell him. What Zhou Mucheng said just now was that as long as he lost, he would voluntarily lead to death. It is not easy for a monk of the same rank to kill a monk who is wearing spirit armor and flees for his life. But neither side runs away, and if they keep fighting, one side will always lose. For example, the real essence is exhausted. Just as Chen Daoxian expected. The battle between the two in the sky is getting more and more intense. Various second-order sword tactics were displayed, shrouding a radius of several kilometers in a sword light. Time flies by little by little. Blink of an eye. An hour has passed. Since both sides gave up their defenses and fought for their lives, the consumption of true qi was extremely terrifying. That is to say, the defensive power of the second-order high-grade spirit armor is very exaggerated. Zifu cultivator would have to waste a little bit of strength if he wanted to break open. For monks of the same rank, except for sword cultivators, few people can break the defense of second-rank high-grade spirit armor. Neither side could break through the other's defenses. The only thing left is to consume each other's true essence. To be frank, in Chen Daoxuan's eyes, a fight of this level has no merit. In his eyes, the level of kendo on both sides was clumsy and ridiculous. But in the eyes of the many foundation-building cultivators present, the strength of these two is almost the top level among the foundation-building cultivators. Whether it is defense or attack, they have almost touched the ceiling of the base-building cultivator. Another half-hour passed. Under the high-intensity consumption, Zhou Mucheng's real yuan is not as good as Wu Guangyi after all, and it begins to show a downward trend. "Brother Zhou, you are defeated." The words fall. Wu Guangyi's sword beam finally broke through Zhou Mucheng's spirit armor. Because of Zhou Mucheng, there is no real energy to maintain the consumption of spirit armor. Hey hey. Looking at the flying sword inserted into his chest, Zhou Mucheng's face paled and he laughed, "Old Ghost Wu, you have won." Chapter 140. Pity. Chen Xianhe shook his head. What a pity. Chen Daoxian looked at Chen Xianhe in confusion. Heard. Chen Xianhe sighed, "I feel sorry for Brother Zhou. This shouldn't be the work of the Zhou family, but in order to calm the matter and buy time to investigate the matter, the Zhou family had to sacrifice Brother Zhou." Chen Daoxian frowned slightly. "Can't the Zhou family report to Qianyuan Jianzong?" Chen Xianhe shook his head and did not speak. At the same time, standing beside Yang Linyuan, Yang Gongwan asked the exact same question as Chen Daoxian. "Grandfather, why didn't the Zhou family and the Wu family report this to the Qianyuan sword sect?" Yang Gongwan looked at Yang Linyuan in confusion. Who knows that Yang Linyuan's expression froze slightly when he heard the words Qianyuan Jianzong. A long time. He sighed, "It's not impossible, but unwilling." "Don't want to." "That's right," Yang Linyuan nodded. Before the chaos of Xinjue, the Zhou family was the Jindan family, although after the chaos of Xinjue and the Battle of Zenangguan, the vitality of the Zhou family was greatly damaged. But with the rise of Zhou Mubai, the Zhou family has a strength and prestige comparable to the peak of that year. Plus, their Zhou family wants to be the #1 family in Sangzhou. The first family in Sangzhou? Yang Gongwan said in surprise, why does the Zhou family? Before she finished speaking, she thought of Zhou Mubai, and of Zhou Laozu, whose Zhou family was a step away from Jindan. Silent. At this moment, Yang Gongwan vaguely understood why the Zhou family did this. The life of a derelict foundation-building clan quelled the anger of the major families in Guang'an, in exchange for the Zhou family's time to investigate the matter. In the Zhou family's view, it's worth it. Otherwise, once this matter hits the Qianyuan sword sect, the Zhou family will not only lose face in front of their colleagues in Guang'an, but will also leave an image of incompetence for the entire Zhangzhou colleagues. Until then, even if there is another Jindan cultivator from the Zhou family, in the eyes of outsiders, it is no different from the current Yi family. How can a family that can't even settle the trivial matters in Guang'an Mansion become the first family in Sangzhou? The Zhou family needs time now to restore their lost face. At this point, Chen Xianhe understood it, and Yang Linyuan also understood it. Even Zhou Muqing had this preparation in his heart before he came here. Then why didn't the Wu family report to Qianyuan Jianzong? Yang Gongwan looked at her grandfather again. Yang Linyuan said quietly, compared to the Zhou family, the more than 100 foundation-building cultivators lost by the Wu family have been completely lost. Rather than revenge, what they need is to think about the present and the future. Considering the present and the future. Yang Gongwan was even more confused when she heard this. Before the chaos of Divine Ju, the Wu family, like my Yang family, was a big family with nearly 10 cultivators of the Zifu. Over the years, the Gods' Rebellion and the Battle of Zenangwan, the Wu family has declined step by step until now. What they lost was not only their strength, but also the shaky hearts of the clan, especially the fact that the Wu family lost more than 100 foundation-building cultivators this time, which was the last straw that overwhelmed the hearts of the Wu family. Compared with investigating the truth, Wu Guangji's first thing to do is to unite people's hearts. Yang Linyuan's eyes were deep, otherwise, the hearts of the people will be scattered, and the family will be finished. Gather the hearts of the people. In this regard, Yang Gongwan felt quite a bit. Because once the Yang family, like the Wu family, declines step by step. As the strength of the family declines, there are also people who gradually dissipate. In this situation, it was not until Yang Linyuan broke through the Purple Mansion and formed the Guang'an Immortal League that the Yang family regained their confidence. Sometimes faith is not worth mentioning, but sometimes it is too important. Yang Linyuan didn't know that Yang Gongwan thought so much for a while, and continued, as for the future. Wu Guangyi knew that what he wanted was to unite the hearts of the clan, not to offend the Zhou family completely. After all, there are still tens of thousands of monks in the Wu family, and they will continue the family in Guang'an Mansion in the future. If he ignored the report to Qianyuan sword sect, he would have slapped the Zhou family severely in front of his colleagues in Guang'an and even the whole of Zhangzhou. No matter how things end, the Zhou and Wu families will have an endless relationship from now on. Will the Wu family and the Zhou family live forever? Hear this. Yang Gongwan suddenly became enlightened. For a cultivation force, strength is fundamental, but reputation and face are also very important. Even something second only to strength. The consequences of losing your reputation. Just look at the fate of the Yi family in Sangzhou. Not to mention, in Wanxinghai, in Sangzhou, and even in Guang'an Prefecture, how many are actually selling Yi family accounts? The Yi family cultivators were ridiculed when they walked outside. Although the Zhangzhou Yi family is known as the #1 family in Sangzhou, it is only barely capable of it, but in terms of reputation, no family will recognize them. Now the Zhou and Wu families all want this face, and Zhou Muqing, who is dereliction of duty, is the victim of sacrifice. People talking. A new change has taken place on the field. Just as Zhou Muqing was slaughtered by the neck, Zhou Muqing's son Zhou Xiliang rushed forward regardless. The old thief of the Wu family, you dare to touch my father. Liang Er. Don't. Zhou Muqing blushed when he saw Zhou Siliang's actions, and said in shock. Zhou Siliang didn't care about his seriously injured father's dissuasion, his eyes were red, and with a flash of light, he rushed towards Wu Guangyi. After all, not everyone is the same as Chen Daoxian and Zhou Mubai, who can fight beyond the ranks. Zhou Siliang, a cultivator who has just established a foundation, is no match for Wu Guangyi, a cultivator who has completed foundation establishment. Roll. I saw a flash of sword light. Wu Guangyi's flying sword appeared in front of Zhou Siliang. Ugh, see this scene. Chen Daoxian sighed. Originally, this matter was the choice of the Zhou family, the choice of Zhou Muqing, and Chen Daoxian had neither the right nor the intention to intervene. But at the moment, Zhou Siliang was about to fall in front of him. Chen Daoxian had to ask. Next moment, a star came first, and Wu Guangyi's flying sword was slashed and flew out. Immediately after, Chen Daoxian escaped and stood in front of Zhou Siliang. He cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoist Wu is a bit too vicious to kill the killer so painfully. Who are you? Dare to interfere in my Wu family's affairs?" Wu Guangyi's face suddenly darkened. Now, his heart had already set off a stormy sea, that star, if he was not wrong. Jian Xiu. It's Jian Xiu. The people present were not uninformed. Someone immediately recognized Chen Daoxian's method. Boom. This sentence immediately caused an uproar on the field. Sword repair. In addition to Zhou Mubai, Guang'an Mansion had a second sword cultivator. Shuanghu Island Qin family, Chen Daoxian. Chen Daoxian bowed his hands and said indifferently, "I have no intention of interfering in the Wu family's affairs, but you can't move." Chen Daoxian pointed at Zhou Siliang. Do not know why. Wu Guangyi breathed a sigh of relief after hearing that Chen Daoxian did not intend to interfere in his Wu family affairs. After all, the prestige of Jianxiu is too great in Wanxinghai and even in Xianyun continent. If Chen Daoxian insisted on intervening today, the Wu family really couldn't close. Chapter 141. Sword Repair. Hearing the exclamations from the base-building cultivators present, Yang Gongwan only felt that her brain had suffered a heavy blow, she was dizzy, and she couldn't recover for a long time. Year after year, what she painstakingly pursued was actually accomplished by a small family cultivator who she never really valued. This moment, an unprecedented sense of frustration overwhelmed her. She finally understood that what her grandfather had always told him was that the big family came from the small family step by step. There are not many big families, and they are born big families. She looked at the much-anticipated Chen Daoxian, and seemed to see the rise of a big family from that radiant figure. Sword repair. If Chen Daoxian does not fall in the future, the Chen family will inevitably rise and become unstoppable. This point, Yang Gongwan, who knew the horror of sword cultivators, couldn't be more clear. Brother Zhou, let's go. Chen Daoxian glanced at Zhou Siliang, whose emotions were gradually losing control, and a thunderous voice exploded in his ear. Surprised by this explosion, Zhou Siliang regained his consciousness a little, and he looked at Chen Daoxian with prayers in his eyes. Brother Chen, help me once, please, save my father. Hear this. Chen Daoxian was silent. After a long time, he sighed, Brother Zhou, haven't you seen it? It's not that I don't save Uncle Zhou, but this decision, both your Zhou family's decision and your father's own choice. Chen Daoxian didn't know what the Zhou family was thinking. But in his opinion, although Zhou Muqing was wrong, he was not guilty of death. The Zhou family was a little too harsh on the clan by doing this. At least, the Qin family under the control of Chen Daoxian could not make such a cold decision. From a profit point of view, this move by the Zhou family undoubtedly paid the least price and preserved the reputation of the Zhou family. Once the Zhou family thoroughly investigates the matter, Not only can it give justice to the Zhou family, but it can also establish the absolute prestige of the Zhou family in front of the millions of monks in Guang'an Prefecture. It even laid the foundation for the Zhou family to become the first family in Sangzhou in the future. And what their Zhou family lost was a trivial foundation-building late-stage cultivator who had little longevity. Even other members of the Zhou family would not feel that the family was cold. After all, Zhou Muqing's dereliction of duty is the result of Zhou Muqing's dereliction of duty. If not, with the strength of the Zhou family, it will definitely not fall into the dilemma that it is now. No. I don't believe it. Zhou Xiliang kept shaking his head. It's impossible for the family to give up my father. My Zhou family has been standing in Guang'an Mansion for more than 1,000 years. What storms have not experienced? Back then, during the chaos of divine judgment, Sangzhou Jindan cultivators died so many battles, and so many families were destroyed, and my Zhou family survived. With the death of more than 100 foundation-building cultivators this time, my Zhou family will give up their clan. I don't believe it. I don't believe anything. Zhou Xiliang said. His eyes were red, his expression seemed to be eating people. Seeing him like this, Chen Daoxian didn't know how to comfort him. Only silence. Father, what are you doing? Zhou Xiliang turned his head with difficulty, and saw Zhou Muqing, who was covered in blood, resting his right palm on Zhou Xiliang's back. On the palm of his hand, one after another spell pattern circulates. Chen Daoxian recognized at a glance that it was the technique of banning Dantian Qi Si. Zhou Muqing broke a gap in his left chest spiritual armor, and from the gap, he could even faintly see his beating heart. This kind of injury, on ordinary people, would have died long ago. But Zhou Muqing, as a cultivator in the late stage of foundation establishment, still insisted on forcibly mustering the few remaining sips of true essence, and under the sneak attack, Zhou Xiliang's Dantian was temporarily imprisoned. Zhou Muqing ignored his son's surprised eyes, turned to look at Chen Daoxian, and bowed to him tremblingly. Nephew, uncle, thanks. Uncle Zhou, please get up. Chen Daoxian took a volume of real essence and brought Zhou Xiliang, whose Dantian was imprisoned and temporarily lost control of real essence, to his flying sword. On the other hand, he supported Zhou Muqing's fallen body with his hands. Zhou Muqing immediately looked at his own flesh and blood, with a hint of doting in his eyes, and said, Xiliang, from now on, because my father is not in this world, you need to ask your brother Chenmore for advice. Don't be the same as before, messing around with all those hooligans all day long, remember? Zhou Xiliang was already crying, shaking his head with red eyes. Father, no, no. Tears kept rolling down Zhou Xiliang's cheeks, and he said hoarsely, we are the Zhou family, the Wu family dare not do anything to us, father, run away. Run away, heard. Zhou Muqing smiled miserably. Back then, when I was at Jinan Pass, I escaped, and since then, I have sworn that in this life, I, Zhou Muqing, will never run away again. Say it. Zhou Muqing stopped looking at his son, turned to look at Wu Guangyi, and said loudly, Old Ghost Wu, I lost, according to the agreement, my life is yours. Who knows to hear this? Wu Guangyi glanced at Chen Daoxian, and there was a deep fear in his eyes. Cough. Don't worry, this is my own choice, and it has nothing to do with anyone else. Seeing Wu Guangyi's eyes, Zhou Muqing immediately knew what the other party was thinking. He coughed blood and laughed wantonly. Okay. Wu Guangyi nodded heavily. After today, my Wu family will no longer mention your Zhou family's interception of my Wu family members, but your Zhou family must give us an explanation as soon as possible. Rest assured. Zhou Muqing nodded. Even if you don't talk about this matter, my Zhou family will give you an explanation to the Wu family and millions of colleagues in Guang'an. In the 1,000 years since my Zhou family established the immortal city of Guang'an Mansion, apart from the chaos of the gods of the past, there has never been a second such serious killing incident. My Zhou family will definitely give everyone a satisfactory explanation for this matter. These words, Zhou Muqing said decisively. After he finished speaking, he closed his eyes, ready to reverse his true essence and cut off his heart. But next second. However, he found that his true essence was imprisoned. No, to be precise, his entire body was imprisoned. Who? Zhou Muqing opened his eyes in horror. Although he is almost exhausted at this moment, he is a late foundation building cultivator after all. If he can achieve this level, it may be difficult for a Zifu cultivator to do it. Could it be Cultivator Jin Dan? Zhou Muqing was taken aback by his thought. At this time, a rather familiar voice entered everyone's ears. Clan brother, why is this? Above Lingrui City, in the air dozens of miles away from Lingshan Mountain, a white figure walked towards everyone in the air step by step. This white figure walked very slowly, but every step seemed to be stepping in the hearts of everyone. Under his feet, the air burst into little ripples, like the legendary lotus growing every step of the way. Guang'an Sword Immortal Zhou Mubai. Seeing the person coming, Yang Linyuan sucked in a breath. On the third floor of the purple mansion, how did his cultivation level rise so fast? Yang Linyuan murmured. But at the moment, no one was paying attention to his words anymore, and everyone's minds were placed on the white figure who was walking towards everyone step by step. Chapter 142. The Hinterland of Limba Island. A fourth-order spiritual vein was completely enveloped by a fifth-order mountain protection formation. On the spiritual veins, Lingshan mountains stand in it. On each Lingshan, there is a immortal palace looming. According to legend, this fifth-order mountain protection formation was created by the Zhou family, who made great contributions to Qianyuan Jianzong thousands of years ago, and asked a Yuanying Zhenjuan of Qianyuan Jianzong to set it up by himself. This is different from the immortal city of Guang'an Mansion on the coast. This is the home of the Zhou family. Except for the monks of the Zhou family, outsiders are not allowed to enter without invitation. Among the mountains, there is the most towering Lingshan Immortal Palace. A monk with silver hair and a youthful face stood on the high platform of the palace, overlooking the faint Lingshan group under his feet. Suddenly, he sighed, Mu Bai is gone. Hear this. A spectator who pushed in the door paused slightly, his face was a little ugly, and he lowered his head to admit his mistake. Patriarch, this subordinate is incompetent, and I failed to stop him. Jianxiu on the third floor of the Z mansion insisted on leaving, not to mention you, even if the old man made his own shot, he couldn't stop him. The silver-haired youth shook his head, third elder, it's not your fault. Mu Bai, with his perseverance, his way. In this matter, it may not be clear who is right and who is wrong. But, is it worth it for a late foundation building cultivator who made a big mistake? The three elders were very puzzled. Heard. The ancestor of the Zhou family smiled. In your eyes, Muqing is the one who made a big mistake, but in Mu Bai's eyes, he is my Zhou clan, that's all. Mu Bai would never give up any Zhou clan, even if giving up him was the best choice. Above Lingrui City. Before the floating mountain. Zhou Mubai grew lotus under his feet and walked in the air. As he walked towards the crowd step by step, the cultivator present felt that the air around him became stagnant. To know. There are tens of thousands of monks who came to participate in the celebration of Lingrui City today. So many cultivators were actually suppressed by Zhou Mubai's aura. Visible. The name of Sword Immortal is not false. Chen Daoxian looked at Zhou Mubai, who was walking towards him step by step, and felt as if his whole body was in a quagmire. All the time. He felt that he had built the foundation of the strongest swordsmanship. Even if he was not Zhou Mubai's opponent, he was at least as good as him. But obviously, he overestimated himself, or in other words, underestimated Zhou Mubai. Only by standing in front of Zhou Mubai in person did Chen Daoxian feel how much pressure he was under. Compared with Zhou Mubai, the patriarch of the Clear Water Monkey clan he fought with before was no different from a child. Dantian gas is domestic. The flickering starlight floating in the sky above the sea of air, stimulated by Zhou Mubai's aura, gradually stabilized. Call. As the starlight became brighter and brighter, the pressure on Chen Daoxuan's body became less and less. With a slight movement, he found that he was actually able to move. Obviously. Zhou Mubai, who was in the distance, also noticed this scene, and his eyes burst with light. It's like encountering a big happy event. Zhou Mubai's thoughts moved, and he pulled the momentum of his whole body away from everyone, and then pressed towards Chen Daoxian a little bit. This time, Chen Daoxian suddenly felt that the burden he had just lifted was on his shoulders again, and this time, he was under even more pressure. He knew that Zhou Mubai intended to weigh his fineness. Although Chen Daoxian has not practiced for a long time, as a sword cultivator, he is just like the sword cultivators in the world, he would rather not bend. At this moment, Zhou Mubai's pressure stimulated him instead. Dantian is full of energy, and Jian Yuan is running wildly. Coupled with the increase in the tangible sword intent above the air sea, no matter how much pressure Zhou Mubai exerts. Chen Daoxuan's 3 feet in front of him were firmly controlled by him, and he was not affected by Zhou Mubai in the slightest. You become heard. Chen Daoxian only felt that the pressure around him receded like a tide. He looked at Zhou Mubai, nodded and said, I got lucky. Well. Zhou Mubai laughed wantonly, today is a big bait. Done. Zhou Mubai looked at Zhou Mucheng, and the smile on his face subsided. Looking at Zhou Mucheng's blood-soaked appearance, Zhou Mubai shook his head and said, Brother, why is this so, heard? Zhou Mucheng smiled miserably, young patriarch, this must be the case. If not, my Zhou family will not be able to comfort the hearts of the Wu family. Otherwise, I will not be able to gain the trust of millions of people in Guang'an Prefecture. The heart of the Wu family. Gain the trust of the Guang'an people. Zhou Mubai raised his brows, what's so difficult about this? Say it. Zhou Mubai turned his head and looked at Wu Guangyi, the head of the Wu family opposite. Wu Guangyi saw Zhou Mubai's eyes looking towards him, only to feel a terrifying pressure pressing on him, making it extremely difficult for him to open his mouth. Beside him, the flying sword that had been slashed by Chen Daoxian, was even more frightened by Zhou Mubai's sword intent, and let out bursts of whining. A long time. Wu Guangyi only felt his whole body light up, and he knew that it was Zhou Mubai who took back his momentum. Fellow Daoist Wu, what is your request from the Wu family? In front of so many colleagues from Guang'an, just say it. Zhou Mubai said indifferently. Okay. Wu Guangyi nodded, plucked up his courage and said, I said before, as long as you Zhou Mubai apologize to my Wu family for the Zhou family, and swear that this is not your Zhou family's doing, I will believe you, do you dare? Who knows? When Zhou Mubai heard this, he smiled lightly, turned to look at Zhou Mucheng, and said, just because of this, the clan brother will give his life to protect each other? Could it be that in the eyes of the clan brother, my face, Zhou Mubai, is more precious than the life of the clan brother? Hearing this, Zhou Mucheng was silent. He didn't wait for Zhou Mucheng to answer. Zhou Mubai looked around at the Guang'an mansion who were present, and said loudly, my Zhou family did not protect the safety of the Wu family's route to the immortal city of Guang'an mansion, this is my Zhou family's negligence. On behalf of the Zhou family, I, Zhou Mubai, apologize to the 136 members of your Wu family who lost their lives. Say it. Zhou Mubai bowed deeply and stood up with 3 breaths. Seeing this scene, everyone felt Zhou Mubai in their hearts and respected the Zhou family. As for the oath you said. Zhou Mubai paused slightly. The hearts of everyone present were raised. As long as Zhou Mubai dared to swear in public, it was basically 100% certain that this matter was definitely not the work of the Zhou family. Because it is impossible for the Zhou family to take Zhou Mubai's path as a bet in order to attack the mere Guang'an Immortal League. This is for the Zhou family. Undoubtedly, it will ruin the future and hope of the family, and it is an extremely stupid act. I, Zhou Mubai, hereby swear that if the 136 foundation building cultivators of your Wu family are harmed by my Zhou family, then I, Zhou Mubai, will not be able to make any further progress in swordsmanship in this life. This oath, heaven and earth can learn. Boom boom boom. As this oath was established, a dull thunder sounded faintly in the sky. Everyone vaguely felt something. Around Zhou Mubai, there was an indescribable flow of energy, which was exactly the effect of making the Great Tao Oath. Qin Dao Xian is very familiar with this effect. Because Luo Xiuyuan, the head of the Merman clan, made such an oath in front of him. Seeing this scene, everyone let go of their doubts about the Zhou family. This is definitely not the Zhou family's doing. Fellow Daoist Wu, how is it? Wu Guangyi was speechless when he heard this. Half an hour. He just bowed his hands and said, Senior Zhou behaves like this, only to teach the younger generation to admire, my Wu family, I have nothing to say. Fellow Daoist Wu, don't worry, my Zhou family will give you a satisfactory answer to the Wu family and the Guang'an mansion. Hear this. Wu Guangji's eyes were slightly red, he bowed and choked, so, please. Chapter 143. Above Lingshan. Yang Linyuan looked at Zhou Mubai, who was surrounded by the center of the cultivators like the stars and Gongyue, and his heart was filled with emotion. Seeing that Zhou Mubai was alone, with a few words, he easily controlled the audience on the Guang'an Immortal Alliance's site. Thinking of this, Yang Linyuan's eyes showed a touch of bitterness. It was only Zhou Mubai alone. It suppressed the momentum of everyone in the Guang'an Immortal League. Isn't it ridiculous that the Guang'an Immortal League still wants to compete with the Zhou family? Shook his head. Yang Linyuan seemed to have found something, turned to look at Yang Gongwan beside him, and asked, where's fellow Daoist Zhao? The Zhao Daoyu in his mouth is Zhao Yuanhuan, the head of the Zhao family, one of the three pillar families of the Guang'an Xianmeng. I don't know. Yang Gongwan was also a little surprised. Just now, she had been focusing on Qin Dao Xian, Zhou Mubai and others, but Yang Gongwan didn't pay attention to the whereabouts of the Zhao family leader. On the field. Zhou Mubai took out a second-order elixir for the treatment of injuries and fed it into Zhou Muqing's mouth. Then he pointed to Zhou Siliang's Dantian beside Qin Dao Xian, and released his Dantian imprisonment. Regain control of your true essence. Zhou Siliang hurriedly flew in front of Zhou Muqing and said excitedly, Father, are you all right? After taking the elixir, Zhou Muqing's face looked much better, he shook his head at Zhou Siliang and said, Dad is fine. Subsequently, he bowed his hands to Zhou Mubai again and said, Young Patriarch, Mu Qing made such a big mistake, and it also involved the young Patriarch making the Great Tao Oath for me, Mu Qing, I feel ashamed, heard. Zhou Mubai shook his head and said, although the clan brother has committed dereliction of duty, his sin will not lead to death. What's more, fortunately, the clan brother didn't find out that the Wu family cultivator was attacked that day, otherwise, you and the clansmen on the battleship would probably be more fortunate and less fortunate. Anyway, thank you young patriarch, from now on. In the future, don't forget your identity as a member of the Zhou family, which is the best reward for me. Zhou Mubai raised his hand and interrupted Zhou Muqing's words. Zhou Muqing was moved and choked up a little. On the side, Zhou Siliang even knelt down to Zhou Mubai and said, Thank you young patriarch for saving my father's life. Get up. Looking at the Sitsi generation in front of him, Zhou Mubai waved his hand slightly, and the other party involuntarily stood up. Finished talking with the Zhou family. Zhou Mubai looked at Qin Dao Xian on the side and said, Brother Qin, congratulations. In the future, I will have another sword cultivator in Guang'an House. Zhou Mubai still didn't say a word, it was the sword cultivator who forged the foundation of the strongest sword cultivator. However, Zhou Mubai also knew the truth of Mu Xiuyulin, and deliberately kept a secret for Chen Daoxian, but did not explain his details in public. Anyway, everyone is not a sword cultivator. Everyone's understanding of Jianxiu only stops at his superior combat power. Not only is he invincible at the same level, but he can even fight beyond the level. As for how to fight beyond the ranks, what is the difference between Jianxiu and Jianxiu? The cultivators are not very clear. Actually, if it wasn't for Chen Daoxian who obtained Zhou Mubai's swordsmanship jade slip, he would not have known that there was actually a road to the strongest swordsmanship among swordsmen. I don't even know that sword intent has a hierarchy. It can be seen from this. There is a difference between heritage and no heritage. If Chen Daoxian was born in Qianyuan Jianzong, his achievements would definitely be much higher than now. Of course, in the Qianyuan sword sect, there are more constraints in all aspects than now. It was a fluke. Chen Daoxian said modestly. Zhou Mubai believed it. Although he did not embark on the path of the strongest sword cultivator, he could imagine how violent the true qi that had been tempered once would be when it was transformed into true essence. The reason why he didn't set foot on this road at the beginning was because his talent was slightly inferior, and his kendo talent was not enough for him to understand the sword intent during the qi refining period. On the other hand, it was also Zhou Mubai who had no confidence that the foundation would be successful. Because he knew that this kind of qi refining period would become the evildoer of the sword cultivator. To a certain extent, it could be said that God would not tolerate it. If you want to build a foundation successfully, the right time, place and people are indispensable. Even so, it is a life and death situation. Therefore, this kind of sword cultivator who understands the meaning of the sword during the period of qi refining is called the legendary sword cultivator. Just because it's rare. A few people talking. An old man wearing a light blue Taoist robe flew high into the sky, bowed his hands to the surrounding base-building cultivators, and said loudly, "Everyone wait." Everyone was attracted by his voice and looked over. This old man is a 9th-layer foundation building cultivator. His hair is gray and his face is vicissitudes. It seems that he is approaching the limit of his lifespan. This person is the head of the Zhao family that Yang Linyuan was looking for, Zhao Yuanhuan. Immediately after, Zhao Yuanhuan flew in front of Zhou Mubai, bowed to Zhou Mubai, and was reluctant to get up for a long time. Zhou Mubai recognized the other party and quickly raised his hand and said, "Friend Zhao, why is this heard?" Zhao Yuanhuan raised his head. Who knows, when Chen Daoxian saw the expression on his face, he only felt a shock in his heart. What a face this is! I saw Zhao Yuanhuan's face full of despair and misery as if he had been abused by others. His eye sockets even cracked open one after another, dripping with blood. "Senior Zhou," Zhao Yuanhuan said miserably, "My Zhao family, it's over. My Zhao family. It's over." The last sound was simply earth-shattering. It caused an uproar among the Guang'an people present. What happened? The Zhao family is the second largest family in Guang'an Prefecture after the Zhou and Yang families. The number of clansmen and cultivators is not lower than that of the Wu family, and they are good at alchemy. They have always been very popular in Guang'an Prefecture. Yeah, what a murderer to be able to do such a thing. First the Wu family, then the Zhao family. Hey, why do I feel that things are getting more and more complicated? Zhou Mubai heard the pained cry of the Zhao clan leader, grabbed Zhao Yuanhuan's arm, and said anxiously, "Don't be in a hurry, fellow Daoist Zhao, and make it clear." Hearing this, Zhao Yuanhuan had blood and tears in his eyes, and said in pain, "My clan has just sent a message to me, and the Lotus Island of my Zhao family has been attacked by a group of evil spirits." What evil is it? I don't know. Zhao Yuanhuan shook his head. Before he finished speaking, the other end of the communication was cut off. This. Zhou Mubai and the others looked at each other. "Can we still contact you?" Zhao Yuanhuan shook his head and said, "The old man keeps contacting, but no one responds. Senior Zhao, please rescue my Zhao family. After this battle, my Zhao family is willing to lead the Zhou family. Don't mention it beforehand, let's go. Zhou Mubai grabbed Zhao Yuanhuan's body and was about to leave. Chen Daoxian hurriedly said, Brother Zhou, I would also like to go. Chen Daoxian also felt that something was wrong at the moment. First the Wu family was attacked, then the Zhao family. He has to find out the situation, otherwise such a disaster will happen to the Chen family. How can the Chen clan resist? Okay. Zhou Mubai glanced at Chen Daoxian and didn't think much about it. With a scroll of sword light, he took him and Zhao Yuanhuan into the sky and flew towards the Lotus Island. Chapter 144. The Lotus Archipelago is a large island in the middle of 8 islands, shaped like a lotus flower. Viewed from a high altitude, it looks like a lotus flower in full bloom. Here is the Zhao family land. The Zhao family, like the Yang family and the Wu family, used to be the Zifu family in Guang'an, but now it has declined and has become a foundation-building family. Even so, the background of the Zhao family is not comparable to that of ordinary foundation-building families. The Lotus Archipelago consists of 9 large islands, 8 small islands. Among the 8 smaller islands, the mortals of the Zhao family live, and the big island at the core is the residence of the cultivators of the Zhao family. But at the moment, on the Lotus Island, the yin and evil spirits are permeating, and there is no such thing as the appearance of a fairyland. You must know that the original main island of the Lotus Archipelago has a third-order spiritual vein. But at this moment, this third-order spiritual vein has become the source of Yin Sha Qi. The main island of the Lotus Archipelago. Inside the Zhao family immortal mansion. At this moment, the whole immortal mansion was surrounded by Yin evil spirits, and there were ghosts and shadows in it. Not to mention mortals. Even if the cultivators of the foundation establishment period come here, they will be attacked by the evil spirits before they stay here for a long time. Big brother. Why did you let that kid from Zhao's family go out? The person who spoke had a broad face and a blue face, and when he opened his mouth, Sun Han's fangs loomed. Upon closer inspection, there were even traces of dark red flesh and blood left between the lips and teeth. Looking at the outline of his face, it was not the Sun brothers who went to the Xinjue immortal mansion to search for treasures. Hear what my brother said. The tall and thin corpse demon with a pale face raised his head and glanced at his brother. Its eyes are golden, and there is a hint of cruelty and coldness. This person is the previous white-faced base-building cultivator, Sun Fu. The Lord's order is for the 2 of us to capture Guang'an Mansion as soon as possible, and use this as a foundation to attack Cangzhou Xiancheng. And as far as I know, there are only about 10 cultivators in the Zifu from the Zhou family in Guang'an. Moreover, Zhou Mubai from the Zhou family is a sword cultivator with outstanding combat power. He paused. If you want to win Guang'an Mansion as soon as possible, you must find a way to weaken the strength of the Zhou family. But, are you so sure that the Zhou family will send the Zifu cultivator to investigate? I'm sure, and the Zhou family definitely sent more than 1 cultivator from the Purple House. Sun Fu rubbed his black nails. Its nails were as black as ink and as sharp as flying swords, and a string of sparks exploded under light friction. More than 100 cultivators of the Wu family at the foundation building stage were killed by us and turned into corpse servants. To be able to do this, at least a few cultivators of the Zifu have joined forces. Therefore, the Zhou family will definitely send Zifu cultivators to check it out this time, and there will be more than 1. Sun Fu did not guess that the Zhou family had indeed sent a cultivator from the Zifu. It's just not a few, but Zhou Mubai. High in the air. Zhou Mubai's escape light swept across the sky, extremely fast. Chen Daoxian felt that Zhou Mubai's escape speed was even several times faster than his. Brother Zhou, don't you think this is a little strange? First the Wu family, then the Zhao family, how do I feel that the other party seems to be leading us by the nose on purpose? Hear this. Zhou Mubai froze slightly. Indeed, things have developed up to now, and it is indeed a bit abnormal. The purpose of attacking the Wu family's fleet was to show the Zhou family their strength, and the opponent had at least one cultivator from the Zifu. Immediately afterwards, the Zhao family was killed. As such, if the Zhou family wants to find out, they must send more than 3 cultivators of the Zifu to ensure that everything is safe. It seems so. Zhao family's Lotus Island, no matter how you look at it, looks a bit like a trap deliberately set by the other party. Zhou Mubai understood what Chen Daoxian meant, but the Wu family's fleet had an accident on the route to Xiancheng in Guang'an Prefecture. Now the enemy is showing signs in the Zhao family land. Zhou Mubai had to go and find out just for the promise he made in front of his colleagues in Guang'an. Say it again. Zhou Mubai is a master of art and bold. He was sure that as long as he was not a late Jindan cultivator and used his trump card, he would have the assurance of escaping for his life. And if the other party has the strength of a late Jindan cultivator, why are they so sneaky? Directly attacking the immortal city of Guang'an Mansion will not be finished. Hearing Chen Daoxuan's words, Zhou Mubai said with a solemn expression, no matter what, go to Lotus Island and see it first. Chen Daoxian nodded. Right now, that's all there is to it. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian couldn't help feeling a little irritable. Originally, the Guang'an Xianmeng and the Zhou family were fighting, but at best they were only fighting but not breaking. A direct armed conflict between the two sides is unlikely. But now, inexplicably, there has been evil chaos, and armed conflict is inevitable. Actually, whether in Wangxinghai or Xianyunzhu, there are evil cultivators. Although the overall strength of these evil cultivators is not strong, they are like mice in the gutter. Of course. According to Zhao Yuanhuan's narration, what happened on Lotus Island may not be as simple as the evil cultivator. Zhou Mubai's escape was extremely fast. In less than an hour, it has crossed a distance of tens of thousands of miles. Front. Lotus Island is already in sight. This was the first time Chen Daoxian came to Lianhua Island, because the Chen family's Shuanghu Island was probably located on the left side of Guang'an Prefecture, while Lianhua Island was on the right side of Guang'an Prefecture. If you want to rush from Shuanghu Island to Lianhua Island, at the speed of Chen's cargo ship, it will take at least several months to sail. Moreover, the Chen family and the Zhao family are not familiar with each other, and there is not much interest in the two families, so there is no need to come here. Arrive. Seeing the white-haired Zhao Yuanhuan in his own family's land, his heart was burning, and he couldn't wait to go to Lotus Island to find out. But fortunately he still has some sense. Knowing that this trip must rely on Zhou Mubai's strength. Evil spirit. A purple light flashed in Zhou Mubai's eyes. Obviously, this is a spiritual pupil secret technique. Chen Daoxian couldn't see any yin and evil spirits, just looking at the main island of Lotus Island in front of him, there was an uncomfortable feeling. Brother Zhou, what is the evil spirit? Zhou Mubai descended an escape light on a small island outside and explained, you should know that spiritual energy is transformed from earth energy, right? Hearing this, Chen Daoxian nodded. Spiritual veins are built according to the terrain, and no spiritual vein can be built in the air. Even the power source Lingshu pool in the Zhoujiao Lingshu battleship was made by using a unique refining method. Anyway, it is absolutely different from the spiritual veins. Evil energy is transformed from spiritual energy. Speaking of this, Zhou Mubai's face suddenly became serious. If it was an ordinary evil, Zhou Mubai would destroy it by himself. But an evil spirit that can transform the spiritual meridian into the Yin meridian is not something Zhou Mubai can act rashly. First, the evil spirits have a bonus in the Yin meridian, and the cultivator is in a place full of Yin evil energy, because the body has to resist the invasion of the Yin evil energy at all times, so it is good to be able to exert 7 or 8 achievements in one's strength. Over and over again, the strength gap will be huge. Perhaps the other party's early purple mansion can be used as the middle purple mansion. More importantly, since the other party has transformed the third-order spiritual meridian of the Zhao family into a yin meridian, it proves that the cultivator of the Zhao family is already more fortunate. After Zhou Mubai's explanation, Qin Daoxian suddenly realized the seriousness of the matter. On the main island not far away, there is far more than one evil spirit hidden, but a large group of evil spirits. I just don't know the specific strength of this group of evil spirits. Fellow Daoist Zhao, Brother Qin, wait here for now, and wait until I go to the main island to investigate. Zhou Mubai bowed to the two of them. Zhao Yuanhua knew that his strength was limited, and even if he went, it would drag Zhou Mubai back. But he turned his eyes to Qin Daoxian. Because in the eyes of the Zhao clan leader, Qin Daoxian is also a sword cultivator. Although his strength is not as good as Zhou Mubai, he is definitely much stronger than his foundation-building cultivator with a near lifespan. See the eyes of the Zhao family leader. Qin Daoxian pondered for a moment and said, Brother Zhou, why don't you and I join forces to find out how? Hear this. Zhou Mubai suddenly felt that Qin Daoxian was not timid, but immediately thought of his strength, and nodded in agreement. With the foundation of sword cultivation made by Qin Daoxian, his strength is definitely comparable to that of ordinary monks in the early period of Zifu. If Qin Daoxian went, it would also be a help to him. Chapter 145. Two rays of light quietly descended on the main island of Lotus Island. It was Zhou Mubai and Qin Daoxian. As soon as he entered this island, Qin Daoxian discovered that there was a completely different atmosphere here from the 8 surrounding islands. Not long after he landed, this breath invaded Qin Daoxian's body. See. Zhou Muqing threw a green elixir over, and said, This is the evil-breaking pill, which can resist evil spirits within 3 hours, and will not affect your strength. After he finished speaking, he thought about it and threw it to Qin Daoxian as a spare. Qin Daoxian raised his head and took the posha pill. Immediately, the yin evil qi no longer invaded his body, as if there was a layer of protection, which vaguely isolated him from the yin evil qi. Zhou Mubai also took a posha pill and said, Brother Qin, be careful in everything. Don't worry, Brother Zhou. Qin Daoxian nodded. Although he didn't know how many evil spirits were on this island or how strong the evil spirits were, Qin Daoxian was very confident in himself, especially in Zhou Mubai's strength. With Zhou Mubai around, even if he encounters a Jindan-level evil, he can evacuate safely with himself. After taking the posha pill, the two did not dare to waste time, and headed straight for the Zhao family's spiritual veins. Because they were afraid of scaring the snakes, Qin Daoxian and Zhou Mubai did not choose to walk in the air, but flew on the ground like mortal warriors. It's just that the speed of the cultivator is much faster than that of the mortal warrior. In the eyes of mortal warriors, you can't even see the shadows of the two of them. Since both of them had practiced the breath conditioning technique, the auras on Qin Daoxian and Zhou Mubai's bodies had all faded to an almost inaudible level. The other side. In the Zhao family land, Sun Fu was holding a circular mirror-shaped instrument in his hand, and what was displayed on the circular mirror was the figures of Qin Daoxian and Zhou Mubai running away. Zhou Mubai. Sun Fu was overjoyed when he saw Zhou Mubai's figure. Originally, it thought that if it could get rid of a few ordinary Zhou family cultivators this time, it would be a big victory. Unexpectedly, I caught a big fish. However, happy to be happy, Sun Fu did not dare to be careless. After all, Zhou Mubai was a sword cultivator, and his real combat power far surpassed that of an ordinary cultivator of the Zifu. Even, given Zhou Mubai's current level of cultivation on the 3rd floor of the Purple Mansion, several late-stage cultivators of the Purple Mansion were not necessarily his opponents. After all, when Zhou Mubai defeated Luo Xiuyuan 5 or 6 years ago, he was only at the 1st level of Zifu. Think of this. Sun Fu said to the younger brother beside him, go and see, have those few corpse servants with perfect foundations been made? Brother, don't worry, you have already practiced it. The broad-faced man's face was blue and purple, and his fangs were exposed. With the complete strength of our two purple houses, plus the three-headed corpse servants of the early purple house, Zhou Mubai will definitely be left behind. Still can't be careless. Sun Fu shook his head. Even if Zhou Mubai is defeated, with the background of the Zhou family, it is impossible not to give him a life-saving trump card. If he escapes at that time, things will be troublesome, heard. The wide-faced zombie took this seriously, and said seriously, I have already arranged a great formation of 10,000 corpses and blood, and combined with the evil spirit of the third order in Meridian, Zhou Mubai will never be able to escape. Sun Fu was relieved to hear the great formation of corpses and blood. With the complete battle strength of their 2 Zifu, plus the early battle strength of the 3 Zifu, a total of 5 Zifu, combined with the great array of 10,000 corpses and bloody demons, couldn't win Zhou Mubai. Then he is too scary. I am afraid that the real strength is comparable to Jindan Cultivator. Arrive. Zhou Mubai raised his hand and used the spirit pupil secret technique, only to see that the mountains in front were enveloped by a thick layer of black air. It's here, the source of the evil spirit. Zhou Mubai said solemnly. This moment. The two of them no longer have any expectations for the survival of the Zhao family cultivator. It's just, where have the mortals of the Zhao family gone? This point, both of them were very puzzled at the beginning. You know, in addition to tens of thousands of monks, the Zhao family also has millions of mortals. So many mortals, even if they die, there will always be a place to bury their bodies. But the truth is, Chen Daoxian and Zhou Mubai searched all over the 8 small islands, but they didn't find a single Zhao family mortal. The only possibility now is the mortals of the Zhao family were made into corpse servants by this group of evil spirits. There is a third order Yin vein here, and it is not too convenient to refine a corpse. Think of this. Chen Daoxian could not help clenching his fists. As someone who has been educated in previous civilizations, since Chen Daoxian was born, he felt that his 3 views were out of tune with this world. Because compared to the previous life, the world is more cruel and naked. The humble and cautious life of mortals in this world far exceeds the ancient society of the previous life. This can be known by looking at the awe-inspiring attitude of the mortals in Chen Daoxian's clan towards him. This is still family. Other ordinary people tend to be more humble when they see a monk. Because this is a group of existences that can take their lives if they move their fingers. Sometimes, Chen Daoxian feels that he is very lucky, because he has spiritual roots, at least in this world, he can try to control his own destiny. But ordinary mortals. First, they have no force, and second, they have no productivity, and even their living space depends on the monk's mercy and charity. Even so, the mortals in this world are still tenacious and hardworking. This moment, Chen Daoxian had a qi in his heart, an uneasy qi. Whether it is a monk or a mortal, everyone is a human race. Obviously they are both human races. Mortals have already lived so humble, yet they still suffer such a tragic fate. Millions of people who said that they were made into corpses were made into corpses. Chen Daoxian didn't know whether these evil spirits were human or ghost. But he is in this moment. He secretly swore in his heart that he would never die with these beasts. Zhou Mubai seemed to notice that Chen Daoxian exuded a strong killing intent, and said in surprise, Brother Chen, what's the matter? Nothing, just thinking about the affairs of the Zhao family, I feel a little uncomfortable. Hear this. Zhou Mubai sighed and comforted, maybe, things are not as bad as you think. This sentence. He didn't even believe it himself, but Zhou Mubai could only comfort himself like this. Millions of lives were lost just like that. Go. Zhou Mubai took out an invisibility talisman and slapped it on himself, and then slapped one on Chen Daoxian. Immediately, a roll of sword light took Chen Daoxian to fly towards the deep mountains. He was eager to take a look at this moment. Are things really as bad as the two of them imagined? But when Chen Daoxian and Zhou Mubai flew over several hills, they saw a scene in the basin surrounded by several mountains that they will never forget. In the valley below, one after another corpses piled up in the valley basin like a pile of garbage. Zhou Mubai used the spirit pupil secret technique and found that all the corpses piled up in the mountains were filled with evil energy infecting their corpses. All the time. These corpses are being tempered by Sha Qi. Sure enough, they are refining corpses. Zhou Mubai's face was ashen. At this moment, Chen Daoxuan's hands were shaking slightly. He almost clenched his teeth, and a sentence popped out of his mouth, "I'm going to chop up these bit by bit." "I'll be with you," Zhou Mubai said with a pale face. Chapter 146. I heard that someone is going to chop me up. Behind the two, a cold voice came over. Chen Daoxian and Zhou Mubai turned around quickly when they heard the sound. Because they did not dare to reveal their traces, not only did the two of them dare not reveal their bodies, but they also did not dare to release their spiritual senses, for fear of stunning snakes. Did not expect. The two are so careful. Still found out. Seeing that the two of them were discovered, Chen Daoxian and Zhou Mubai simply released the invisibility talisman and the breath-holding technique on their bodies. Confrontation with Brother Sun Fu in the air. Behind Brother Sun Fu, 3 corpse servants dressed in spirit armor and covered in silver luster stood in the air, surrounded by blood and evil spirits. Zhou Mubai recognized at a glance that the 3 were monks from the Wu and Zhao families during their lifetimes. And all of them were foundation building and perfect cultivation. Unexpectedly, after some tempering by the Sun brothers, they were actually promoted to the level of Zifu. However, Zhou Mubai knew that this kind of forcibly promoted Zifu corpse refining was no match for a normal Zifu cultivator. After all, this kind of corpse refining is only a powerful body, and the means are very limited. Of course, its attack and defense definitely reached the level of the Zifu cultivator. If you think that the Zifu cultivator has a lot of methods, you dare to ignore the opponent's attack, which is completely courting death. By now, Chen Daoxian and Zhou Mubai only had a fight. But what they didn't expect was that a light curtain rose straight up from the corpse refining ground, and instantly sealed the sky above Chen Daoxuan's heads. Not good. Seeing this, Zhou Mubai pulled Chen Daoxian up, and the light flashed, but was still stopped by the blood-colored light curtain. How about it? What's the taste of the 10,000 corpses and blood demons that I prepared for you? Sun Fu looked at the two of them in the formation, and burst into gloomy smiles. Although the Sun brothers are also in the great formation of 10,000 corpses and blood evil, this kind of blood evil spirit will only enhance the strength of their zombies, not weaken them. Really? As the blood evil spirit in the formation is getting heavier and heavier, it has become more and more difficult to stop the blood evil spirit from attacking. Zhou Mubai and Chen Daoxian had to use their true essence and mana to resist the attack of Sha Qi. No, if we go on like this, we will die when our mana and true essence are exhausted. Zhou Mubai's face became solemn. The corpse servant of the Z Palace belongs to you. Done. A scroll of sword light directly enveloped the Sun brothers and the 2 corpses. The Sun brothers knew that Zhou Mubai's strength was amazing. But at this moment, Chen Daoxian and Zhou Mubai are already trapped in the formation. They don't need to fight with each other recklessly, they just need to wait for the formation to use up their real mana. The two naturally became meat on the chopping board, and they were slaughtered. Especially Zhou Mubai is a sword cultivator. I don't know if the corpse made by sword training will be stronger than the ordinary corpse. Sun Fu fully thought. From the moment it was transformed into a zombie by the real god, it was completely distorted. What it wants now is to make all the people in the world into zombies. In this way, everyone will be the same again. As for zombies, they have no pain, no touch, no taste, and no soul. What does it matter? Corpse servants don't need self-awareness, they just need to be the master's puppet. The reason why the two brothers retained their self-awareness was because their masters needed them to complete the task of capturing Sangzhou. And their master, God Ju Daoist, seems to be extra cautious. Hiding in the old nest is not willing to take risks at all, so all this can only be done by the two of them. If you want to do this, a corpse without self-awareness can't do it. This is also the only lucky place for the two of his brothers. Seeing that the last zombie was still rushing towards Zhou Mubai, Chen Daoxian rolled up the sword light and involved it in his attack. The sword gas turns into rain, the white marks form a curtain, and the sword marks merge into one, turning into stars. This is the change in Chen Daoxian's Kendo's external performance before and after comprehending the Siyu sword intent. Now, one after another star, like a falling star, smashed onto the silver body of the Zifu zombie. But this Zifu zombie not only has spiritual armor to protect the body, but also has a strong body. Chen Daoxian felt that the opponent's physical body was even more terrifying than the monsters of the same rank, and he felt no pain. After Chen Daoxian's sword marks were united, the attack power of sword transformation Starlight definitely reached the level of the early days of Zifu. The only difference between him and the Zifu cultivator may be in defense. That's right. As a sword cultivator, defense once again became his shortcoming. But this is also the shortcoming of all sword cultivators in the world. Because Jian Xiu originally focused on attacking, and paid attention to attacking instead of defending. If even Jiangxi's attack can't break the opponent's defense, it proves that the gap between the two sides is already huge, and there is not much difference between defense and defense. But at the moment, the situation is somewhat special. Chen Daoxian encountered a Zifu zombie, who happened to be good at defense. Compared to its defense, the attack of this Zifu zombie did not cause much damage to Chen Daoxian. Whenever the opponent pounces, he just needs to use the star to smash his figure and avoid it a little. As a result, the two sides were at a stalemate. To be frank, if you change the scene, Chen Daoxian is really not afraid of fighting a war of attrition with the opponent. After all, he has a reserve of true essence, the second-order fortune-telling White Lotus. But at this moment, he can't afford it. The blood-colored evil spirit is getting stronger and stronger, eroding and consuming his true essence all the time. And even if he can afford it, Zhou Mubai may not be able to afford it. After all, Zhou Mubai doesn't have his natal magic weapon. Think of this. He glanced at Zhou Mubai's battle circle. It seems that they are afraid of Zhou Mubai's attacking methods. The Sun brothers' play style is quite obscene, that is, try to avoid fighting with the opponent as much as possible. It really had to be reckless, and it was also a few zombies who worked together recklessly. Hit now. Zhou Mubai did cut off one of the two zombies in the early stage of Zifu. But with the replenishment of the blood evil spirit, Chen Daoxian found that the zombie's hand actually grew again. Chen Daoxian immediately saw the problem. Every time Zhou Mubai wanted to kill a zombie in the early stage of Zifu, in order to break the balance of combat power between the two sides, the Sun brothers tried their best to intercept it. With the perfect strength of his brother Zifu, even if Zhou Mubai could beat them, he would have to spend a lot of effort. Every time there was such a delay, the zombie crisis in the early days of Zifu was resolved, and the Sun brothers began to fight against Zhou Mubai again. Chen Daoxian could see it. Together, the two corpses were able to force Zhou Mubai's attack. This is also the confidence for them to kill Zhou Mubai. If Zhou Mubai could kill them with one sword, they probably ran away when they first discovered Zhou Mubai. See this. Chen Daoxian turned his heart, and while avoiding the attack of the Zifu zombie, he said, "Big brother Zhou, I will block one of their brothers, and you will do your best to deal with the other zombies." Hear this. Zhou Mubai was surprised at first, but then he realized that there was nothing he could do at this moment, so he had to take the risk and agree. Okay. Chapter 147, Next Moment. Chen Daoxian rushed into Zhou Mubai's battle circle with the zombie he was fighting with. Zhou Mubai saw the timing, and a sword beam pierced the sky. The sword glow was hundreds of feet long, drowning everyone's sight. Now, in the eyes of everyone, there is nothing else between heaven and earth except this sword glow. Even the aura that permeated the formation of 10,000 corpses was split apart by this sword glow. The sword light finally hit the red light curtain of the great array of 10,000 corpses and blood, sending out little ripples and disappearing. See this scene. Zhou Mubai's heart sank, but he was not too disappointed. Because his purpose has been achieved. I saw this sword beam hundreds of feet long, forcibly separating the Sun brothers who had been inseparable. Sun Fu saw this. After a pause, he flew up, wanting to meet his younger brother. But Zhou Mubai would never give him a chance. As soon as the sword light was rolled, he re-involved it into his own offensive, and together with it, the early Zifu zombie who was fighting with Chen Daoxian was involved. Well done. Chen Daoxian's face was filled with joy, and then a star appeared, directly bombarding the wide-faced zombie who wanted to meet Sun Fu. Boom! The stars fell like shooting stars. It smashed on the silver-purple body of Sun Fu's younger brother Sun Mang, causing it to slam back into aid. Sun Mang looked at Chen Daoxian who attacked it, and opened his mouth full of fangs. A golden light flashed from the depths of his pupils, full of tyranny and cruelty. Jia. You actually want to stop me? It's just you, Herd. Chen Daoxian took a deep breath and nodded, it's just me. How brave! Sun Mang roared. Immediately, a fist smashed towards Chen Daoxian. Chen Daoxian, like dealing with the Zifu zombie before, also turned his flying sword into a star and bombarded it. Who knows, the zombies in the early stage of the Zifu could stagger their attacks and put them on Sun Mang, but after a little while, they dashed towards Chen Daoxian again. Not good. Chen Daoxian's eyes narrowed. Obviously, the zombies of Zifu's completeness were far beyond his scope of coping. After all, his current cultivation base is only the initial stage of foundation building. Other cultivators at his cultivation level, let alone fighting against the zombies of the Purple Mansion, it is estimated that a roar of the enemy can scare the cultivators in the early stage of foundation establishment to the core. In the nick of time, Chen Daoxian escaped with a flash of light, and avoided Sun Mang's attack dangerously. Hide. Sun Mang smiled cruelly, how long can you hide? Chen Daoxian was silent. In the face of the zombie with the complete strength of Zifu, he no longer has the energy to speak again, and he must pay full attention to the other party's movements. After all, as long as he hits the opponent with a random blow, he will be killed on the spot by the opponent. Chen Daoxian had no doubts about this. This means that zombies can only melee combat and have limited means. If it is replaced by a human race who reaches the complete monk of the Zifu, Chen Daoxian will definitely be beheaded on the spot in 3 or 2 strokes, and there will be no chance to play such an exciting game with the other party. Seems to think of something. Chen Daoxian thought about it. Moment. Within a radius of thousands of feet, it was shrouded in a curtain of rain. Sword chi turns into rain. This ability that he realized before comprehending sword intent, as Chen Daoxian's swordsmanship cultivation became more and more profound, he has used it less and less. Because of the enemies he faced. Either the early period of Zifu, or the great perfection of Zifu. Not even a normal foundation establishment cultivator. In the face of an opponent of this level, the move of sword chi into rain is simply scratching the opponent's itch. Shichichi. The raindrops that the sword energy turned into fell on Sun Mang's terrifying body with silver-purple muscles and knots, making a chi-chi-chi sound. But not even a single hair on the other side could be hurt. Jia, Sun Mang smiled and said, "Why, are you tickling me? If you only have this ability, then go to hell. Say it." Sun Mang's body was like electricity, and he rushed towards Chen Daoxian with a 3-point speed faster than before. And this moment, Chen Daoxian seemed to be frightened, standing still. Boom! The claws pierced the air and let out a roar. Sun Mang's sharp claws were as black as ink and sharp as sharp swords. With just one blow, Chen Daoxian's figure was torn apart. However, no blood flowed out. Afterimage. Sun Mang turned his head, and the next moment, he found that Chen Daoxian appeared in front of him one after another in the rain curtain with a radius of several thousand meters. This. Sun Mang was a little dumbfounded. He is a zombie and has no soul, so he has no consciousness. At this moment, he can't tell which Chen Daoxian in front of him is real. And among these, Chen Daoxian, some people disappear from time to time, and new, Chen Daoxian, appear from time to time. Weird. This is Chen Daoxian's understanding of the technique of sword light transforming rainbow for several months, combined with his own sword intent, and created a short-range fighting technique. This kind of movement is not only fast like lightning, but also has the effect of confusing the enemy. Just like now. The sight of hundreds of Chen Daoxian figures in front of Sun Mang made him extremely annoyed. Because he couldn't tell which figure was real and which figure was fake. This method is the inspiration Chen Daoxian got from the rain of sword chi, which is to use the human body as a flying sword. It's just that the strength of the physical body is quite high. Fortunately, Chen Daoxian has practiced the body training method, so there is not much problem in cultivating this body method. This body technique was named by him, Body Transformation Sword Light. Dozens of figures were torn apart in a row, but none of them were real, and Chen Daoxian's figures became more and more smashed, and finally it was almost like a rain curtain turned into sword chi. It was attached to Sun Mang's body. How can there be such a reason? How can there be such a reason? Sun Mang was so angry at Chen Daoxian's sloppy play that he shouted. Obviously Chen Daoxian's strength is far inferior to him, but he is playing around with him, how can he not be angry? This moment. He suddenly fell in love with the divine consciousness he had when he was a human monk. If he has divine consciousness, how could he be played by Chen Daoxian like this? At least he can tell the truth from the fake. But what it doesn't know is that even if it has spiritual consciousness, it is extremely difficult to distinguish the true from the false, because Chen Daoxian has practiced the breath-holding technique and has practiced it to a very advanced level. There are only two ways to decipher this method. One is that the cultivator's consciousness far surpasses that of Chen Daoxian, and he can naturally see through the truth at a glance. Another method is to practice the secret technique of spiritual eyes, like Zhou Mubai, and be able to distinguish the true from the false. On the field, Sun Mang became more and more angry. Go away. Sudden. Sun Mang became anxious when he saw that his eldest brother was in a precarious situation under Zhou Mubai's offensive. One claw tore apart Chen Daoxian's sword light incarnation. He rushed towards Zhou Mubai's battle circle. But the reason why Chen Daoxian held it up was to let Zhou Mubai kill the enemy, so how could he be willing to let Sun Mang return to help at this moment? Next second, a ray of stars fell and hit Sun Mang's chest, causing him to stop. But other than that, Xingmang did no harm to Sun Mang. Chen Daoxian didn't expect his attack to hurt the opponent either. All he had to do was hold back Sun Mang. Now, the anxious party instead became the Sun brothers. The other side. Sun Fu saw that his younger brother roared wildly, but took Qin Daoxian to do nothing, and his heart gradually sank. He figured everything out. But only the variable Qin Daoxian was missed. Without Qin Daoxian. With the help of his younger brother Sun Fu, and the three-headed Zifu early-stage zombies, with the help of the 10,000 corpses and blood demons, they were at least 80% sure to keep Zhou Mubai. But now. Think of this. Sun Fu shook his heart and took out a white ball the size of an adult fist. Chapter 148. Come out. You come out. What kind of skill does light hide? Sun Mang's green face and fangs, his eyes are sunken, and he looks like a madman. In the face of Sun Mang's clamor, Qin Daoxian rationally ignored him. See you. Sun Mang's sharp claws slashed wildly in the rain, but what was torn apart was just Qin Daoxian's sword light incarnation. Even. The speed of his shredding is not as fast as that of Qin Daoxian. In a radius of thousands of meters, the incarnations are constantly emerging like raindrops. Even if Sun Mang smashed dozens and hundreds of sword light incarnations with one blow, Qin Daoxian could create 10 times the amount in an instant. Have to say. This move is used to deal with Sun Mang, an enemy who has no means of group attack and can only fight in close combat. It is very useful. Of course. This move can only be used to delay time, it is almost impossible to kill the enemy. Because of Qin Daoxian's strongest attack, he couldn't even break the opponent's defense. This self-knowledge, he still has it. The other side. Fighting with me, how dare you get distracted? As soon as the words rang in Sun Fu's ear, he secretly screamed in his heart, and his body quickly turned away. The next moment. A dazzling sword beam slashed through its left arm like a piece of training, directly cutting off its left arm at the root. Die. Zhou Mubai was so powerful that he controlled his flying sword again to behead him. Although zombies are invulnerable, water and fire are invulnerable. But it is not without any weaknesses, such as cutting off its head and smashing its corpse pills, the zombies will completely disappear. How dare Sun Fu take Zhou Mubai's flying sword again? Hurriedly called the three-headed Zifu early corpse servant to block the sword for it. The three-headed corpse servant did not know why he was afraid, but he completely obeyed the master's order and slammed into Zhou Mubai's sword light head-on. Just for a moment. There was a corpse servant from the early period of Zifu that was split in half by Zhou Mubai's flying sword. Although the blood evil energy of the 10,000 corpse blood demon formation kept pouring towards the body of this corpse servant, trying to repair its broken corpse, but it was useless after all. Sun Fu saw that it was a little distracted, and Zhou Mubai seized the opportunity and abolished one of its helpers. I was shocked and angry at the moment. No. It can't go on like this. Sun Fu was secretly anxious. Followed. He glanced at Zhou Mubai, and then at Qin Daoxian who kept playing with his younger brother. I have a decision in my heart. First kill the weak one, then concentrate on killing Zhou Mubai. Think of this. Sun Fu picked up the white orb in his hand and threw it in the air. The Dharma beads seemed to possess spirituality. They spun around in the air, and then a ray of light shone toward Qin Daoxian. Who knows? Zhou Mubai saw this scene. Suddenly, a scene recorded in the ancient books of the clan appeared in his mind. God is a real person. Soul Divine Pearl. This is the famous magic weapon of Shinjue Jinren back then, the Soul Ding Divine Pearl. Rumors. This bead can cooperate with a unique magical power inherited from the real immortals of the upper realm, called Dingpa Xingguang. The power of calming divine light is extremely powerful. With the cultivation of Shinjue Jinren in the later stage of Jin Dan back then, he could even use this magical power to fix the Yuanying Jinjuan who was one level higher than his cultivation. To know. In a battle between high-level monks, there is no need to say more about what will happen if one side is controlled by the other side. That was simply one-sided brutality. It is precisely because of this supernatural power, coupled with the unique means of escape and hiding of the real person of God Jueju. And Qianyuan Jianzong was involved in his own internal affairs. Let Shinjue Jinren run rampant in Sangzhou and several surrounding states for nearly 100 years. It wasn't until Qianyuan Jianzong resolved his internal affairs that he freed up his hands and cleaned it up. Do not. To be precise, Zhou Mubai wasn't sure whether the real Shinjue was beheaded or not. Because Qianyuan Jianzong did not bring back the body of the other party, but only announced in public that Shinjue Jinren blew himself up and died, he left Sangzhou in a hurry. Now, 400 years have passed. The matter of Shinjue Jinren has long been blocked by the major families. If it wasn't for the fact that the scattered cultivators kept telling the story of this person, the name of Shinjue Jinren would have been completely forgotten by people. Now, Shinjue Zenren's famous magic weapon has appeared again. Think of this. Zhou Mubai was in a hurry. If what happened in the Zhao family land, behind it is the words of Shinjue real people. Zhou Mubai's first reaction was to flee immediately and report to Qianyuan sword sect. As the heir of the Zhou family, he knew much more about Shinjue Jinren than the outsiders. In those days, the Qianyuan sword sect sent a total of 3 Yuanying true monarchs to encircle and suppress each other. As a result, not only did he not even see the body of the other party, but he also damaged a true monarch nascent soul. That's right. Shinju Daoist accomplished a feat that no one in the history of Wan Xinghai could do. With the cultivation of Jindan, the reverse beheading of the Yuanying true monarch is still in the case of one enemy 3. And now it seems that this one is very likely not dead. After all, its magic weapon appeared, and this time the Zhao family was suddenly destroyed. No matter how you look at it, it looks like the Taoist god Jueju came back to take revenge on the Sangzhou cultivator. After all, Shinjue Jinren was born in Sangzhou. Also has the most grudges with the monks of the major families in Sangzhou. In Guang'an Prefecture, almost every big family with a long tradition has suffered great losses at the hands of Shinjue Renren. The Zhou family was originally a Jindan family, and the ancestor of the Jindan in the clan died in the battle against Shenjuezhen. Careful! Zhou Mubai burst out his strongest attack while shouting, Qinglian sword art. Give me death, in midair. A cyan lotus flower is budding. This duo Qinglian wrapped the 2 zombies in the early stage of the purple palace that stood in front of him. Followed. The green lotus flower is open, with 1 petal, 2 petals and 3 petals. Every time the petals open, the zombie body in the early stage of Zifu becomes illusory. To the end. These 2 zombies disappeared completely in front of everyone, not even the scum left. At the same time, the rays of light from the divine soul bead had already shone on Chen Daoxuan's body. Instant time. Chen Daoxian only felt a strange energy that imprisoned his sea of consciousness. But the golden scroll, Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, that was suppressed in the sea of consciousness space trembled slightly. This imprisoned force instantly disappeared without a trace. From the outside world, the soul-defining light radiated by the soul-fixing bead was actually ineffective against Qin Daoxian. How could it be ineffective? This time, Sun Fu was completely dumbfounded, but the Lord told it that although the soul-fixing bead in his hand was a fake, it was enough to hold a Jindan cultivator for 3 breaths. Qin Daoxian is just a foundation-building cultivator, how could he be fine? Could it be, is the Lord deceiving it? Impossible. Sun Fu quickly shook his head, the Lord had no reason to deceive it. Then, there is only one possibility. In Qin Daoxuan's sea of consciousness space, there is a treasure that can guard the sea of consciousness. Think of this. Sun Fu couldn't help shouting bad luck. If I knew earlier, it would be better to use this divine light on Zhou Mubai. He was just worried that Zhou Mubai had treasures to protect his body, so he chose Qin Daoxian, who looked better to bully. I didn't expect that Soul Ding Xinguang would be of no use to Qin Daoxian at all. Chapter 149. Zhou Mubai killed 2 zombies in the early Zifu with one sword. Then he looked at Sun Fu, and he was so frightened that he hurriedly fled. Don't mind chasing Sun Fu. Zhou Mubai raised his head and looked at the blood-colored light curtain above. Take a deep breath. The next moment, he mustered all the mana in his dantian. Aura flashed in his eyes, apparently using the spirit pupil secret technique. Found it. Faintly, he seemed to have discovered the weak point of the red light curtain. I saw him raise his hand, and a cyan giant lotus was suspended above his head, pressing towards the blood-colored light curtain. Kakaka. As the green lotus petals continue to bloom, the blood-colored light curtain made an overwhelmed cracking sound. Boom. With a loud noise, the blood-colored light curtain shattered directly into a huge gap. See this scene. Zhou Mubai's face brightened. Looking at Qin Daoxian, who was still taking Sun Mang around in circles, in a flash, he found Qin Daoxian's true body. Seeing Zhou Mubai find Qin Daoxian's real body, the red-eyed Sun Mang headed straight for the two of them regardless. Roll! Zhou Mubai roared, and a sword beam of several hundred meters slashed straight at him. With a single sword, Sun Mang was sent flying more than 10 miles away. This sword. Immediately, Sun Mang, who looked like a madman, calmed down and looked at Zhou Mubai with a faint hint of fear. Too fierce. This sword is just a little bit stronger, and it can shatter its corpse pill. The corpse pill shattered, and it really died. Unlike injuries like broken hands and feet, it can be easily recovered. Go! A sword smashed Sun Mang, and Zhou Mubai didn't care about chasing him, so he flew Qin Daoxian towards the shattered opening of the blood-colored light curtain. Finally. Before the blood-colored light curtain closes again, Zhou Mubai rushed out with Qin Daoxian. This moment, Qin Daoxian noticed that Zhou Mubai's face was as pale as paper. Obviously, the explosion of the big move just now cost him a lot. It's normal to think about it. First, he killed 2 zombies in the early stage of Zifu with a single sword, and then broke through the formation of 10,000 corpses that claimed to be able to trap the Jindan cultivator. And before leaving, a sword hit Sun Mang, who had completed the Purple Mansion, severely. This round broke out, and even with Zhou Mubai's third-floor cultivation base, his mana was almost exhausted at this moment. Not to mention that the great array of 10,000 corpses and blood evil is consuming both of the true essence and mana all the time. Brother Zhou, are you alright? Hearing this, Zhou Mubai shook his head and said with a hint of happiness, thanks for bringing you here this time, otherwise I'd be really in danger this time. The situation just now. Even if a cultivator in the early stage of Jindan came here, he might be killed by the Sun brothers. Anyway, in the corpse and blood evil array, as long as you can't kill them in one hit, they can quickly recover with the power of Blood Sha, as if they have an immortal body. And with the power of the 5 Zifu, coupled with the weakening of the human cultivator's strength by the 10,000 corpse blood fiend, it might really be possible to grind the cultivator to death in the early stage of Jindan. Anyway, Zhou Mubai felt that if he came alone, he would be less than 30% sure of escaping. Hear this. Qin Daoxian also felt very fortunate. Fortunately, Zhou Mubai's strength is strong, otherwise the two of them will die on this trip. This is probably the most dangerous situation Qin Daoxian has ever encountered in his life. Trapped in a formation. In the immortal cultivation world, how many high-level monks were slowly grinded to death by a group of low-level monks trapped in the formation? There are simply too many such examples. Qin Daoxian did not expect that he would meet him today. A small island outside Lotus Island. Zhao Yuanhuan was furious, but he knew that at this moment, he couldn't do anything except wait for Zhou Mubai's news. Current situation. Clearly beyond his capabilities. At this time, a ray of light flew from the horizon from far to near. Just as Zhao Yuanhuan was about to bow his hands in salute, he felt a whirlwind in the next instant. Only the word, "Go," sounded in his ear. When he regained his shape, he was already standing on Zhou Mubai's Feijian. Until it escaped thousands of miles away. Zhou Mubai breathed a sigh of relief. "Zhou. Senior Zhou, may I ask, how is the situation in my clan?" Zhao Yuanhuan couldn't wait to see Zhou Mubai breathed a sigh of relief. Heard. Whether it was Zhou Mubai or Chen Daoxian, their eyes dimmed. Zhou Mubai patted Zhao Yuanhuan's thin shoulder and said solemnly, "Friend Xiao Dao, please condolences." Hearing this, Zhao Yuanhuan only felt that his heart had been hit hard by others, and he couldn't help but growl, "Senior Zhou, please explain clearly, what is condolences? Could it be that I, the cultivator of the Zhao family, are all aside?" Chen Daoxian said in a low voice, "Not only your Zhao family cultivator, but even the ordinary Zhao family. Do not hear this." Zhao Yuanhuan immediately spurted out a mouthful of blood, and there was a hint of death in his eyes. Zhao family. Zhao Yuanhuan was the only one left. A large family of tens of thousands of people was destroyed in one day. Seeing Zhao Yuanhuan's appearance, neither of them knew how to comfort him. Or any words of comfort now are pale and powerless words for Zhao Yuanhuan, an old man with a near lifespan. Perhaps, for Zhao Yuanhuan, the only consolation is to personally kill the murderers of the Zhao family. Unfortunately, he is destined to not have the ability to do so. This moment, he is completely desperate for this world. To the end. The death intent in Zhao Yuanhuan's eyes became heavier and heavier. When the two arrived at Lingbei Island, Zhao Yuanhuan sat stiffly on Zhou Mubai's flying sword, and there was no breath in his nose. "Zhao. Young Daoist Zhao." Chen Daoxian called softly. "He died." Zhou Mubai shook his head, "To die from exhaustion of longevity, let alone die of despair." Hear this. Chen Daoxian couldn't help but think of the piles of corpses piled up in the mountain basin. There was an uncontrollable anger in my heart. He stepped forward, squatted down in front of Zhao Yuanhuan, his voice was soft but firm, "Young Daoist Zhao, don't worry, we will definitely avenge the revenge of your Zhao family for you." Zhou Mubai stood behind Chen Daoxian, wondering what he was thinking for a while. Limba Island. Zhou family. Chen Daoxian stepped into the Zhou family's clan for the first time. "I have always heard that the Zhou family land is a place of cultivation like a fairyland. See you today." Far more exaggerated than rumored. The aura of the fourth order spiritual meridian can no longer be simply described as rich, but rather pure. This feeling is like the aura filtered by Chen Daoxian with water spirit beads. Even more terrifying. This kind of spiritual energy has not been filtered by the water spirit beads, that is to say, as long as the Zhou family cultivator is willing, he can filter the spiritual energy again with the water spirit beads at any time to achieve a better cultivation effect. No cultivation resources are mentioned. Just this fourth order spiritual vein alone, in the entire Guang'an prefecture, there is only one family. As for the other three big families, the Yang family, the Wu family, and the Zhao family, which has been exterminated, only have the third-order spiritual veins as a place for clan people to practice. Zhou family land, in the highest Lingshan palace. Chen Daoxian and Zhou Mubai met Zhou Mingho, the patriarch of the Zhou family. Chapter 150, Inside the Palace. Zhou Mingho frowned after listening to Zhou Mubai's narration. "Are you saying that, behind the murder of the entire Zhao family, it is possible that the real person Shinju is doing a ghost?" Zhou Mubai nodded. It's not possible, but very possible. He paused. The divine power of soul-fixing divine light is the inheritance that Xinjue Jinren received from the immortals in the upper realm. No one in the entire Wangxinghai knows this magical power, not even the Qianyuan sword sect has recorded it. Hear this. Zhou Mingho nodded. It shouldn't be wrong. Qianyuan Jianzong can even use the Zhenzong exercise, Qianyuan Jianjing, to exchange for battle merits, so as not to hide a magical power of immortals. Chen Daoxian said, is it possible that these two zombies in the perfect state of Zifu also found the Xinjue Immortal Palace because of good luck and obtained inheritance, and later became zombies because of other encounters? It's not impossible, Zhou Mubai thought for a while, but it's not very likely. Generally speaking, people will lose their minds after they become zombies. It is extremely difficult for zombies to restore their minds. And if a zombie wants to achieve a golden pill, it must experience a thunder tribulation that is 10 times more terrifying than that of a human cultivator. It is difficult for evil things to become a climate, and it is also related to thunder tribulation. But these two people, who are clearly Zifu cultivation base, have consciousness, obviously the person who refines them deliberately. And the person who made them is very likely to be the real Xinjue 400 years ago, a time. The matter was unexpectedly guessed by Zhou Mubai. Only through an imitation of the Soul Ding divine pearl, everyone speculated that Xinju Jinren was still alive. But this news is a little too sensational. Zhou Mingho and Zhou Mubai both looked serious. Chen Daoxian, who knew the least about the chaos of God, was the most calm. After all, in his opinion, no matter how powerful Xinjue Jinren is, he is definitely not the opponent of Qianyuan sword sect. Patriarch, are we going to report this to Qianyuan Jianzong? Zhou Mubai's face was pale, and he bowed his hands. A long time. Zhou Mingho sighed and said, report it, this matter is beyond the scope of my Zhou family's response. Hear this. Zhou Mubai breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the patriarch did not want to settle this problem with the strength of their Zhou family. Instead, he chose to report to Qianyuan Jianzong and ask Qianyuan Jianzong for help. Soon. For the first time, Chen Daoxian saw the communication formation in this world at Zhou's house. You know, a force wants to control the territory under its command, except that the force is enough to suppress the various forces in the territory. Transportation and communication are also two important aspects. Traffic. The higher the cultivator's cultivation, the more terrifying the escaping speed. For example, it is tens of thousands of miles from Chen's Shuanghu Island to Lingbei Island. Before the change, if Chen Daoxian came by boat, it would take about a month. And since he became a foundation establishment cultivator, he has learned to fly. In just a few hours, it is possible to cross distances that previously took a month to cross. This is only comparable to the speed of the Zifu cultivator. Jindan and nascent soul monks, their escape speed is faster. Although Guang'an Prefecture is still millions of miles away from the territory directly under the jurisdiction of Qianyuan Jianzong. But let a Yuanian cultivator fly over from Qianyuan Jianzong, it is estimated that it will take less than a day to arrive. As for the second element of controlling the forces under his command, communication. Chen Daoxian knew that this problem was not a problem at all after seeing Zhou Mingho and Qianyuan Jianzong communicate with each other using the communication method. Compared to the piece of cyan scale that Luoli left him, it could only simply sense and communicate within 1,000 miles. The Zhou family's communication formation can even achieve real-time text communication. Just send the message of one party and send it in text, and you can quickly get the response of the other party. Of course. The speed of this response depends on the speed at which the other party makes a decision. For example, after Zhou Mingho passed the news to Qianyuan Jianzong, he was like a stone sinking into the sea, and he never got a response. But Zhou Mingho and Zhou Mubai both knew it. The high-level officials of Qianyuan sword sect will definitely discuss countermeasures on this issue. Whether it is to send true monarch Yuanying to Guang'an Mansion or other decisions, Qianyuan Jianzong will definitely respond to them, but sooner or later. Qianyuan Sword Sect. Inside a fairy family cave with a lot of spiritual energy. A lonely figure was sitting in the Cloud Fairy Palace. This figure was wearing the most ordinary cotton and linen robe, with beautiful long hair hanging down between the waist and buttocks, only tied with gold wire at the goose neck. She sat in the Asgard Palace, watching the cranes flying in the sea of clouds outside the window, dazed. At this time, the space behind her fluctuated like a water pattern, a young Taoist wearing a white robe with a bohemian expression, tearing apart the space and stepping out in one step. "Sister, are you looking for me?" The expression on the pretty face of the long-haired woman has never changed, and her voice has no waves. The little mouse in Sangzhou has been hiding for 400 years, and finally moved. Hear this. The initially impatient young man's expression changed immediately. Oh. That little mouse is finally willing to come out. My dear, in that secret space where birds don't shit, he hides for 400 years. Isn't he boring? The young man seemed very happy. If it was me, I would have to go out and make a lap when I die. Who do you call Lao Tzu? The long-haired woman frowned slightly. The young Taoist immediately handed over his hands to beg for mercy, saying, slip of the tongue, senior sister, you know that the group of beasts in Wanxinghai are a bunch of scumbags. So what? I went to catch the mouse, goodbye sister. After the young Taoist finished speaking, the space was torn apart by him again, and then he stepped into the space and disappeared. Sensing the departure of the young Taoist, the long-haired woman looked at the sea of clouds outside the window again. When you catch this mouse, it's time to take back Izumo with all your might, master, your wish, your disciple will help you come true, you see. The long-haired woman said disappointedly. Inside the Zhou family discussion hall. It was the first time for the Zhou family that Qin Daoxian attended as an outsider. Qin Daoxian knew that all of this was related to the strength and potential he showed. If it wasn't for Zhou Mubai's statement that he had dragged a zombie with complete strength in the corpse formation, Zhou Mingho, the head of the Zhou family, would not have paid so much attention to him. In Zhou Mingho's eyes, Qin Daoxian's talent is even more terrifying than Zhou Mubai's. At least when Zhou Mubai was in the early stage of foundation building, he would never be able to fight against the cultivators of the Zifu, let alone the zombies who delayed the complete strength of the Zifu. If it weren't for his understanding of Zhou Mubai as a person. Zhou Mingho even thought that Zhou Mubai lied in front of him. How could a mere foundation building cultivator be so strong? Even though Qin Daoxian is a sword cultivator, this is too strong and completely unreasonable. The foundation establishment stage has surpassed a realm to compete with the Purple Palace stage. Anyway, the current Zhou Mubai can support Jindan cultivator for a while at most, and it is impossible to fight back and forth with the opponent. Everyone, the reply from Qianyuan Sword Sect is here. Zhou Mingho's first sentence made everyone including Qin Daoxian concentrate. Recently, the cultivators from the Zhou family's Purple House who were present were all restless when they heard the news that Shinju Jinren was still alive. After all, how much trauma the Shinjue rebellion caused to the Zhou family has been recorded in detail in the clan. Patriarch, below the main hall, an elder from the Zhou family cupped his hands and asked, I don't know how Qianyuan Jianzong responded. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.